Chapter 48-38. Quickly come over and take a look. Duguling beckoned her over. Arbor quickly strolled over and leaned close to the side of the ship to take a look. A gigantic carcass shark abruptly scuttled out of the water. After scuttling several meters high, it smashed into the ship with a dull thud. The little stoic turned around to take a look. Without another word, she snatched a bow from an attendant's hand and shot it twice reflexively. With a whoosh, this gigantic carcass shark smashed into the water with a bang, creating a splash. "Did you hit it? Did you hit it?" Several attendants excitedly asked as they surrounded him. Arbor knitted his brows, inwardly thinking, how could it be that simple? That gigantic carcass shark looked to be as big as two liger beasts, and its swimming speed was astonishingly fast. Thump! A tremor came from the lower cabin. At this time, eldest young Sir Cheen had already swiftly boarded the ship. He glanced at the little stoic. "You guys stay here and don't move. I'll go down to take a look." Arbor cast him a sidelong glance and silently took a small step back. "Don't worry and go." Eldest young Sir Cheen, it wasn't like he was going to die. "What do you mean don't worry and go?" Why did he feel that the words coming out of this fellow's mouth were so unpleasant? Duguling and the fatty with the purple gold hammer also flashed over and said in unison, "Eldest young sir, this subordinate will go with you." Eldest young Sir Cheen didn't refuse them. The three of them jumped into the sea one after another, and their figures were instantly drowned by the waves. On the other side, several Cheen estate servants were carrying sister-in-law Yang, Kupe, and the Fong family siblings towards the four-story ship. Miss Fong's pretty face was extremely pale from the cold. That young Sir Fong was struggling and screaming in the servants' hands, as if he didn't like being touched by the servants at all. The Cheen estate's attendant also had a very unsightly expression. At first, he planned to carry young Sir Fong, but that child writhed in his arms as if he had seen a scourge and didn't like him approaching. This attendant had no choice but to grab young Sir Fong's collar with one hand instead. Who would have thought that when he flew out of the original ship, the child who was courting death began to wail like a ghost and howl like a wolf in midair. As he shouted, he wantonly shook his body. The attendant was pushed down by his twisting body, and at this moment, the carcass shark emerged from the bottom of the water, opened its huge mouth, and bit at the back of his foot. The Zither estate servants, who were on the four-story ship, all cried out in alarm when they saw this thrilling scene. Kai picked up a long bamboo pole and shouted at the servant who was holding young Master Fong, who was swaying left and right on the surface of the sea, "Ernyo, quick, quick, quick. Quickly. Come here quickly." Ernyosi felt a gust of fishy wind coming from below. In the nick of time, he took a deep breath and jumped up with young Master Fong. He stepped on the bamboo pole handed over by Kai and borrowed the strength to jump onto the deck of the ship. At the same time, the carcass shark spat out a ball of dark red mucus, which landed on the railing of the ship and corroded half of the railing. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo, big sister, big sister. The young master of the Fong family cried as he threw himself at his big sister. Miss Fong hurriedly hugged him. Thinking of the dangerous scene just now, she couldn't stop wiping her tears. The siblings were crying so hard that the servant named Ernyo was almost angered to death. He opened his mouth and scolded the siblings, "In the future, if you want to court death, don't implicate others. You think I want to bring him here?" Chapter 48-39. If it weren't for the young master's orders, who would want to bring along such a jinx? You can't come over yourself, and you're still so unpresentable even if someone else brings you along. If you want to die, then die further away. Don't fucking implicate others. Alright, Ernyosi, why are you getting so angry with a child? This child is probably scared silly, and he's quite frightened right now. Forget it, Forget it. Several servants on the side hastily stepped forward to mediate. Afu also followed up with a few words of comfort. He turned to look at the siblings hugging each other and sighed. He said to the embarrassed manager Gu, "Watch them." Little young Master Fong kept trembling in his sister's arms and whimpered, "Sister, it hurts." While they were bickering, Duo Shanmei walked up and yanked little young Master Fong out of Miss Fong's arms. The siblings screamed involuntarily. Little young Master Fong covered his head and scurried away like a rat, burrowing straight into his sister's arms. "Don't move." Duo Shanmei bellowed and forcefully tore apart little young Master Fong's pants. On the exposed calf, everyone could clearly see a few small red dots that seemed to have been burned, distributed on that leg. "What are you doing?" Miss Fong shrieked and hastily covered her brother's leg with a blanket. However, Arbor's voice sounded from the side. "He's been poisoned by corpse poison and must be treated as soon as possible." "What?" Miss Fong looked at Arbor in astonishment, her eyes full of incomprehension. "It's very obvious that he was sprayed on a few spots by the corpse-devouring shark's mucus." Arbor hinted at the Qin estate guard beside him. That guard only had a flash of inspiration, and he immediately drew his sword and took a few steps forward. Miss Fong was stunned. She hugged her brother tightly and cried out in alarm, What are you guys doing? What do you want to do? Do you want to leave him with half a leg or save his life?" Arbor asked sternly. "You should rejoice that this corpse poison has just seeped into his body through his skin and hasn't had time to spread throughout his body." It was rare for Duo Shanmei to feel that the little stoic's words were reasonable. She nodded and said, "Miss Fong, don't hesitate. As long as you chop off half of your younger brother's leg before the corpse poison spreads, you'll be able to preserve his life." As if someone had stepped on her tail, Miss Fong screamed in panic, "No, no, absolutely not. My younger brother cannot be a cripple. He still has to inherit the Fong family in the future and bring glory to the Fong family." Arbor couldn't help but roll his eyes. He secretly complained in his heart, "You're about to die, and you still want to show off. You are all cultivators with remarkable abilities. You must have a way to save my brother without harming him." Xiao Mu turned around and left, not even leaving behind an extra word. She had always believed that if she could help, she would reach out and help others. It was not a problem for her to help with some small matters, as long as it was within her ability. However, this did not mean that she could tolerate others stepping on her nose and ordering her around for no reason. Just like practicing medicine, she would do her best to help those who sought medical treatment in front of her. However, if you didn't trust her ability and still nagged her while ordering her around, then sorry, scram and scram. That was all she had to say. She still had to choose her own path in the future. Since that Miss Fong had chosen to save her younger brother's leg, then she could do whatever she wanted. A trace of grievance flashed through Miss Fong's eyes. Chapter 48-40. She and her brother were both ordinary people. If they asked for help from a cultivator, what could they do if it was just a small matter? That stoic-faced girl looked too cold-hearted. She actually said that she wanted to chop off her younger brother's leg. Was there no other way to compromise? She didn't feel bad about chopping off her younger brother's leg, right? Duo Shanmei couldn't help but be speechless. This stoic girl was still so infuriating. She didn't want to chat after rebuking someone and immediately turned to leave, not even sparing the other party a glance. Duo Shanmei sighed. "Say it. Do you want your younger brother's life or his leg?" If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have acted in the first place. When Ernyozi carried this young sir from that ship to this ship, if he didn't act up and smoothly reach this ship, wouldn't everything be fine? Young Sir Fong's leg was still chopped off in the end. When young Sir Fong fainted from the pain, Miss Fong also fainted on the ground from the shock of seeing blood in her eyes. An hour later, the eldest young Sir and fatty Dugu Ling leaped out of the water and back onto the deck. The little stoic sized them up and asked without batting an eyelid, "Killed?" Eldest young Sir Chin shook his head sullenly. "This corpse-devouring shark is extremely intelligent. It immediately dived into the depths of the sea when it saw that the situation wasn't right. We didn't chase after it to avoid delaying our journey." Arbor nodded and didn't say anything else. Her room was arranged to be on the 4th floor, and the bedding, and utensils were all prepared in the room. The little stoic wasn't a picky person and was never particular when she was outside. After she closed the door and bolted it, she turned around and slowly walked to the table, pouring herself a cup of hot water. Her small hand slowly crawled across the table, her fingertips fiddling with thunder fireballs one by one. A faint haze covered the little stoic's face. Due to this storm, their ship deviated far from the course and had to make a detour for an extra day. Fortunately, everything went smoothly afterward and they didn't encounter any other unforeseen events. They also didn't run into that corpse-devouring shark with a bronze skull and iron bones. On this day, the wind was gentle and the sun was bright, and the sea was calm. Looking from afar, a golden luster danced in the depths of his eyes. 5th young Master Chin pointed ahead. "Do you see the golden beach ahead? The entrance to the pond Lotus Sacred Land is at the peak of that mountain." Arbor narrowed his eyes and looked over. From afar, the small island looked like a lying motionless tortoise. The tortoise's back was high, and it was a mountain covered in fine golden sand. It was no wonder that when he looked at it from here, his eyes were filled with a golden color and were swaying like quicksand. "The pool Lotus Sage Land is on this sea turtle island." 5th young master couldn't help but cough lightly and correct him. "The outside world calls this island Lotus Pond Island." The little stoic was instantly displeased. "It's clearly a turtle island. Where are the lotuses?" "There are no lotuses anywhere. There was only an old turtle lying there, unable to crawl. Under the golden sand, it was completely bare. Other than some uniquely shaped reefs, there was only sand." "Jojo, we still have to wait here for 2 to 3 days. Other than Forget Chuan and Murong, we've already obtained the keys to the other 4 families. The Murong clan has agreed to give us the keys, but they want to send 3 of their disciples to go with us." Eldest young Master Chin said, "I've already agreed." Arbor uttered an "oh." Eldest young Master Chin looked at her with a laugh. Could it be that Jojo has never heard of Forget Chuan and Murong? Chapter 48-41. Murong. Arbor's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't say anything and merely glanced at eldest young Sir Chin. Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't help but nod with a chuckle. "That's what you're thinking. Your master, Murong Sun, is from the Murong family of Wangchuan." Arbor blinked. "Speaking of which, you should be somewhat related to the Murong clan of Wangchuan. How is it? They should arrive the day after tomorrow. Aren't you a bit excited?" Arbor glanced at him without a ripple of emotion. Although he didn't say anything, his disdainful gaze expressed it very clearly. Who the hell knew what was going on with the Murong clan of Wangchuan? Sir Jojo wasn't someone who liked to go around acknowledging relatives. "So, aren't you a bit excited?" Arbor rolled his eyes before leaping up and flying toward the beach. Eldest young Sir Chin rubbed his chin and pursed his lips. "Always so tsundere. You clearly have some expectations, yet you like to act like you don't care. You really need to discipline that wife of yours when you're free," the little radish around 5 or 6 years old said to Mo Lien gravely as he sprawled on Shenwu's back. Of all the things she could do, she just had to make these messy transformation talismans. "Look at what she's turned me into, huh? It had already been several days, but his little lousy body still hadn't recovered. He was currently paranoid and couldn't help but seriously suspect that Mo Lien was purposely tricking him and purposely turning him into this short figure. Shenwu propped him up on his back and couldn't resist saying, "We've already been together for so long, so we should trust each other a bit more." "As if I'd trust you." The little serpent glared at the two men beside him with a huff. "Look at what you've been doing these past few days, wandering around aimlessly after entering the city. Don't blame me for not warning you. With my powerful divine conscience, I can sense that at least 4 or 5 groups of people have already noticed you." Shenwu patted the child's back. "Wrong, it's us." The little snake was so angry that he punched Shenwu's head. "Walk properly and don't talk so much nonsense." Ma Shichen looked back from time to time. "How are we going to deal with the people behind us? These people have been eyeing us for a few days now. It's probably because you guys are too ostentatious in the city and have attracted their attention. Do you know what these two fellows have done that would incur the wrath of man and God? Ever since they entered the city, they had done this kind of thing every day. For example, squatting in front of a roasted rat stall and eating hot sweet potatoes. She really didn't know what that dignified and elegant Prince Mo always kept in his storage talisman. There were roasted sweet potatoes, spicy dried tofu, oranges, and everything else. In the city of Sin, roasted crispy mouse was considered a luxury food. It was hard to imagine that these two cheaters would actually eat roasted sweet potatoes in front of other people's stalls. What was even more infuriating was that yesterday, they actually sat in a stone pavilion by the street, toasting each other and drinking wine, accompanied by 2 or 3 exquisite side dishes. After that, everyone was given a bowl of egg and pork noodles. Was this something that a human could do? Before entering the city, Shenwu had already reminded these two cheaters that the resources in the city were extremely scarce, and none of their belongings could be seen. Chapter 48-42. Alright, whatever Shenwu reminded them of, they would do the exact opposite. Shenwu reminded them for nothing. The number of crazy things these two had done could not be counted with 10 fingers. It was normal for them to attract 5 or 6 groups of people to follow them. At this moment, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal took out a wine flask from his inner world and followed behind Mo Lien. He took a sip of wine to calm his nerves as they walked forward. "Mo Lien, there are more and more people following us. Then why did you freaking show off your apricot wine? Is this person crazy?" "It's fine. Just like we said yesterday, enter the alley in front." Mo Lien nodded and quickly walked to the stone alley on the side. Ma Shichen immediately followed after him, intentionally or unintentionally turning around to glance behind him. Shenwu hurriedly followed them in. Now that he knew Prince Mo's identity, he had a blind trust in His Highness. He always felt that Prince Mo would cheat anyone, but probably not his teammates. Has this kid always cheated others like this? The little snake pursed his lips and could not help but say. "It depends on the situation," Yuan Shichen answered casually, then looked at him with a smile. "What? Are you scared?" "Why would I be scared of him?" The little snake puffed up his cheeks and snorted. "If I recover, I can be a great help to you." Yuan Shichen smiled and looked at him without saying anything. Zuolan Shan saw this guy's eyes and his heart instantly became uneasy. It can't be, right? Looking at Yuan Shichen's eyes, this black-bellied gaze, could it be that he wanted him to stay like this until they got out of the undersea abyss? "Are you still brooding over what happened before?" The little snake keenly sensed that the attack at the undersea abyss entrance might not be over yet. This Prince Mo was really not a good person. Why was he always holding a grudge? Yuan Shichen smiled and patted his head. "Don't worry. One day, I'll take care of you." Yuan Shichen smiled meaningfully at him. "When we fight later, follow Shenwu and don't run too far. After all, with his current physique, if he were to fight, he would be pressed to the ground and beaten up. The little snake looked at them speechlessly. Judging from the attitude of these two black-hearted people, they really wanted to lure all the people from the city of Sin here and get rid of them in one fell swoop. He sincerely sympathized with the unlucky ones. This was clearly an act of pulling a line to fish. How could he have fallen for it? The people of the city of Sin had too much faith in themselves. As Mo Lien and Hichin turned into the stone alley, several groups of people looked at each other, then immediately chased after them without any explanation. In the city of Sin, food was the most precious luxury. They would often fight to the death for a bit of vegetables or a mouthful of meat. All the inner world items taken from the sinkhole had to be handed over to GC. After extorting them layer by layer, the amount of food they could obtain was very little. These people lived in the fear of starvation day and night. Many of them were ordinary people. When they were unbearably hungry, they could eat anything. The group of people swarmed into the stone alley. Although they felt a little uneasy, they did not feel fear or dread. In the city of Sin, outsiders with higher cultivation would be more unlucky and miserable. Chapter 48-43. So what was there to be afraid of? They were all ordinary people. Could it be that they couldn't win in numbers? The first group of people rushed into the alley and saw Mo Lien and Hichin at a glance. They were standing in the same spot and looking at them calmly. Being stared at by those two pairs of dark eyes, the people who chased after them felt guilty and panicked for no reason. However, they forcibly steadied the billowing waves in their hearts, and they even sent out a representative who looked rather pretentious to come forward and converse with Mo Lien and Hichin. Did the two of you come from above? The man pointed up and asked with a smile. Are you new here? After all, they had not seen these new faces 3 days ago. Ji Chen smiled and glanced at them without saying a word. What a coincidence. The person who spoke in front of them was someone they had met once when they were in the deprivation sinkhole. His name seemed to be Omuri. At that time, he was following behind the leader of the worshippers at the sinkhole. He seemed to be a small leader in the city of Sin. With Mo Lien's photographic memory, she had already recognized Omuri's identity with a glance. But they had changed their faces, so the other party would definitely not recognize them. Mo Lien and Hichin acted as if they had never seen Omuri. She glanced at them coldly and said, "Get out of the way. My friends, why aren't you answering?" Behind Omuri, a skinny man walked out. His deep-set eyes were filled with hostility as he stared at them. His eyes were filled with greed as he glanced back and forth between the two of them. There was definitely something strange about the inner worlds of these two people. In such a place, they could actually take out 2 bowls of hot noodle soup. They had never cooked anything before, so there was definitely something strange about it. The inner worlds of these two people should be quite big and filled with many resources. Even if they couldn't take all of it for themselves, as long as they could get a small part of it, it would definitely make their lives easier in the short term. This kind of hope was really tempting. So much so that for such a goal, they did not hesitate to take the risk. Omuri and the others didn't make the first move. Instead, the other 2 groups of people who followed them rushed over and attacked Mo Lien and the others. The rich and varied resources in their inner worlds were simply too attractive to these people. Yuan Shichin and Mo Lien naturally wouldn't be courteous to them. He didn't reject anyone who came and gave them a violent beating. After venting his anger, he asked Shenwu to count the number of people lying on the ground and wailing. He found a few ropes and tied them all up. Yuan Shichin stepped forward and kicked Omuri. He then asked with a smile, "Hand over your waist token that allows you to enter the Grand Lord's mansion." Omuri's face turned pale as he shook his head. Just as he was about to argue, he saw Yuan Shichen kick the person beside him. If he doesn't want to, you do it. Hand it over and I'll let you live. The man's face turned pale and he trembled as he took out a token from his waist. Seeing this, Omuri couldn't help but scold, "Do you really think you can survive after you hand it over? If you dare to betray Grand Lord GC, you will die." Yuan Shichen ignored him and directly punched his abdomen. This punch made Omuri feel that his dantian was shaking along with his blood and chi. It was especially terrifying. Omuri took off the token from his waist and trembled as he handed it to Yuan Shichen. Chapter 48-44. Don't kill me. Omuri stammered, his entire body trembling. Is there a password for entering and exiting the city lord's mansion? Omuri's eyes flickered slightly. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at him with a smile. Don't lie, I hate it when people lie. People who lie usually don't have a good ending. I'll tell you everything. Yes, there are 7 passwords. Different passwords are given to different people. Omuri quickly explained all the passwords, including the details. Then, he looked at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal with fear and trepidation. My lord, now, can we leave? Yuan Shichen turned to look at Mo Lien with a smile. How should we deal with them? Omuri and the others' hearts sank slightly. They wanted to gather their chi, but they were suppressed by a strong pressure. It was impossible for them to escape this place. So these people were really fishing. After hooking a group of fools, they were going to deal with them. Since they have no value, let's kill them. When Omuri heard the ordinary-looking middle-aged man say this, he could feel the cold murderous intent in his voice from a distance. I think it would be better to sell them to people who make rat meat. Yuan Shichen joked, looking at Omuri and the others with a deep gaze. That would attract too much attention. Mo Lien said faintly. The little snake asked incredulously, what do you mean? Were all humans speaking in such a tone? They were clearly talking about entering and exiting the Grand Suzerain GC's mansion. Why did they suddenly talk about rat meat? Shenwu pondered for a moment, then sighed. They are talking about those slaves. The little snake boy could not keep up with their divergent thoughts. He could not understand what they were talking about. Humans were really a strange species. They spoke in such a bold and imaginative way. Shenwu looked at him speechlessly. Can't you use your brain? Are you going to believe whatever others say? Don't you think it's strange that there are people selling roasted rat meat in the streets and alleys of this city? What's strange? Shenwu suddenly had a feeling of not wanting to talk to this idiot. It was a little tiring to explain. Although this human snake had lived for hundreds of years, it didn't have intelligence. Its intelligence was probably that of a 5 or 6-year-old child, right? What do you mean? The snake man shouted angrily. Shichen, Mo Lien, and Shenwu all looked at him with indescribable gazes. It made one's heart feel stifled. How can there be so much rat meat? Shenwu couldn't help but roll his eyes and cry out, it's just a sheep's head under the guise of dog meat. The so-called roasted rat meat was just some slaves killed in the karst cave mining area. Shenwu took a deep breath. In the end, he was still somewhat unable to continue speaking. This kind of thing was really cruel. But in a place like this, any kind of cruelty seemed to be normal. Most of the time, in order to survive, some people would probably do even more earth-shattering and cruel things. The snake man was stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but exclaim, you humans are really too scary. You can really eat anything. Shenwu rolled his eyes at him, too lazy to continue talking to him. If he wanted to find a way out of this underwater abyss, he first had to deal with this group of troublesome people in the city of Sin. After that, he was able to settle down and search around the area. No matter what, he should be able to find a way out. Chapter 48-45. The Murong clan only sent 3 young men and women on this trip. Other than that, no one else came along. After the 3 of them boarded the boat, eldest young Sir Chin led them towards the little Stoic and 5th young Sir Chin sighed with a smile. Stoic, come and meet Forget Chuan and Murong's guests. Murong Yen and Murong Zhao were both 27 or 28 years old and were the cream of the crop among the clan's younger generation. Murong Fei was about the same age as the little Stoic, around 17 or 18 years old. She was lively and active by nature. This was the first time the little girl saw so many people, so she wasn't the least bit afraid of strangers. When her round eyes looked at the little Stoic, they involuntarily brightened. The girl in front of her had a face as pure as snow and jade, which was rarely seen in this world, so she couldn't resist taking a few more glances. At the same time, the little Stoic was also expressionlessly looking at Miss Murong Fei. Her gaze landed on her, as if she was looking at something through her small face. Murong Fei and Murong Sun were truly aunt and niece. Their appearances were 40% to 50% similar. When Arbor saw this girl for the first time, he felt a sense of familiarity spontaneously arising. It was as if his master had pushed open that cold ice coffin and quietly walked through her side. I think I've seen you somewhere before, Murong Fei finally couldn't resist saying after hesitating for a moment. Apologies, my younger sister, Fei, didn't disturb this miss, right? Murong Yen hastily apologized when he saw the little Stoic's taut face. His younger sister always liked to find something to talk about and could strike up a conversation with anyone. Unfortunately, not everyone liked to chat idly with others. For example, this bright-eyed little girl in front of him seemed to dislike the 3 of them. From the moment they met until now, he hadn't seen the little girl reveal half a smile. Thump thump thump. A wave of hurried footsteps approached from afar. Gu Dazhong saw Murong Yen and his siblings with a glance and immediately welcomed them with a beaming smile. It really is you, young Sir Murong. Arbor originally wanted to find this Miss Murong Fei to speak a few words and ask her if she knew Murong Sun. Gu Dazhong's sudden interruption made the little Stoic a bit more displeased in her heart. However, looking at Steward Gu's happy expression of meeting an old friend in a foreign land, Arbor did not say much and silently took a step back. Murong Yen turned around and looked at Steward Gu, his expression slightly startled. You are the one beside Uncle Fong, Steward Gu. Yes. Young master has a good memory. We've only met once back then, so you still remember me. Manager Gu said with a face full of joy. I really didn't expect to meet young master here. Oh, that's right. My young miss and young master are also on this ship. Young master, let's go over and have a chat. Murong Yan's face revealed a trace of embarrassment. He hadn't come here to reminisce about the past. He still had some matters to discuss with Grand Duke Qin and the 2nd young master Ziqin. Gu Dazhong hurriedly poured out his grievances. Young master, our old master brought young miss along the way for 2 reasons. Firstly, it was to inspect the properties in Great Jubilee City. Secondly, it was also for young miss and young master's marriage. Murong Fei opened her mouth wide. How could there be such a coincidence? The 3 siblings had received a mission from their clan to follow the Qin family to the Pond Lotus Sage realm. They could still meet eldest brother's fiancée along the way like this. What kind of ill-fated relationship was this? Murong Fei tugged on her 2nd brother's sleeve and pulled him to the side. Didn't father say that eldest brother's engagement was annulled the year before last? Chapter 48-46. That's right. Murong Zhao had an incomprehensible expression. When eldest brother was in closed-door cultivation 2 years ago, the Fong family sent people to annul the engagement. They said that the girl couldn't afford to wait and wondered if eldest brother would enter closed-door cultivation for several more decades. It wouldn't be good to keep delaying the marriage. Murong Fei nodded. She was also very clear about this matter. Back then, the Fong family brought people to denounce him, and her father apologized awkwardly. Eldest brother and that Miss Fong were originally not too compatible. With eldest brother's current mystique venerable cultivation, he probably still had several hundred years to live in the future. Miss Fong had never cultivated and was only a normal person. She absolutely couldn't accompany him for his entire life. Therefore, she remembered that when the Fong family proposed annulling the engagement, her father readily agreed. Why was this manager Gu talking about this marriage as if they were close friends now? Could it be that Miss Fong was unable to get married, and the Fong family's master regretted it afterward? And when he saw eldest brother coming out of closed-door cultivation, he wanted to pick up this marriage and establish a relationship with their Murong clan again. This was too comical and laughable. Murong Fei couldn't resist shaking her head. Suddenly recalling something, she quickly walked to the little stoic side and said with a smile, "Little miss, I remember where I've seen you before." Murong Fei said with bright eyes, "I've once browsed through all the information about the holy water sect that aunt is in. You're my youngest aunt's personal disciple, right?" With Murong Fei's mention, Murong Zhao's memories also came back. He hastily nodded and said, "Right, no wonder I found you strangely familiar. So you're a disciple of the holy water sect." Arbor glanced at them and pretended to ask casually, "You all know about Master's matter?" Murong Fei withdrew her playful expression and nodded solemnly. Back then, the holy water sect's destruction dealt a huge blow to father and my uncles. Our clan sent people to Seacombe Planet to investigate the truth, but at that time, the entire holy water peak was enveloped by withered vines and ancient trees. The main peak was razed to the ground, leaving not many traces behind. However, we could still analyze some clues. Murong Fei said seriously, "The clan has always sent people to investigate this matter. After a period of close observation, we followed the clues and found the direction of Shuntian Prefecture. However, when we arrived, the entire 6 prefectures were in turmoil. There was a hidden force sweeping through the 6 prefectures like a hot knife through butter. Right now, the authority is completely under Shuntian Prefecture, in the hands of that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord." Murong Zhao nodded. "In order to find out the cause of little aunt's death, we could only send people to secretly capture the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord." What? Arbor had been listening and didn't say anything. Only a faint sense of melancholy lingered in his heart. Isn't this the right way to treat your family? Regardless of the reason, Murong Sun left the Murong family of forgetfulness and headed to the lower star domain to develop herself. However, the clan still kept Murong Sun's whereabouts in mind. Once they received news of her death, they would definitely send someone to investigate. Not every family was as cold as Wang Chuan Longshirt to his mother, right? When Arbor abruptly heard Murong Zhao say that they captured the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, he couldn't help but raise his voice. Shit, it can't be, right? She had been busy all day recently and hadn't contacted Duanzhong for a long time. Could it be that this old fellow Duanzhong was captured by someone? Chapter 48-47. Seeing her agitated reaction, Murong Zhao and his sister hastily asked, "Is there a problem?" According to our investigation, there is conclusive evidence that Shuntian Prefecture accounted for more than half of the people who attacked the Holy Water sect back then. Arbor glanced at the siblings and asked exasperatedly, "Dun I mean, you guys captured that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gung Pengcheng, and brought him back to the River of Forgetfulness?" "That's right. Murong Fei said solemnly, we sealed his divine sense at the first moment and imprisoned him in the dungeon for interrogation. That old punk was also stubborn and refused to confess at all. The strangest thing was that the soul-searching was ineffective against him. Arbor, you guys really searched for the wrong person. She could even imagine that old punk Dun Ju's bitter melon face, his small hands clutching the 2 bars as he wailed, Master, little master. Save Dun Ju. Peach blossoms, save your Dun Ju. Arbor couldn't resist massaging his throbbing head and vaguely seemed to hear Dun Ju's miserable cries. What a pitiful old punk. Why was he so unlucky in this lifetime? When did you guys capture Dun Ju, that Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord? When? Murong Zhao and Murong Fei pondered for a moment before replying, probably around 3 months ago. Arbor widened his eyes in astonishment. Then you guys have been detaining him and torturing him. Murong Fei smiled embarrassedly. That's right. Cough, actually, we didn't want to detain him. It's mainly because this guy doesn't speak the truth. His words don't match and sound like he's making up lies. Arbor was speechless and said after a moment of silence, can you guys release him first after returning? You know him. Murong Fei was startled and sized up Arbor. That old man doesn't look like a good person. Arbor didn't know how to explain it to them and considered for a moment before saying, actually, you guys captured the wrong person. Right now, the wisp of soul in Gung Pengcheng's body is temporarily residing in a friend of mine. Murong Zhao and his sister were at a loss for words as they looked at Xiaomu speechlessly. It's a long story. Let's talk about it later. Arbor signaled them to turn around with his eyes. Murong Zhao and his sister turned around and saw their eldest brother, Murong Yan, walking towards them. Murong Fei smiled and said, is it settled? Murong Yan's expression was somewhat stiff. He shook his head and raised his hand to massage his throbbing temples. In a low voice, he said, this steward Gu is adamant that there is no annulment of the engagement document, saying that this matter is not set in stone. Therefore, the engagement still exists. Everyone looked at each other. His big brother was being blamed by someone. Murong Fei's little face puffed up in anger. Back then, they were the ones who wanted to break off the engagement. Now, they are also the ones who refuse to break off the engagement. I really don't know what they are trying to do. Why is it that the reason of the world is always on the side of the Fong clan? Murong Yan smiled good-naturedly. Forget it, let's talk about this later. Little sister, you stay here and don't run around. Your second brother and I are going to discuss with the 2 young masters of the Qin estate about entering the secret realm. They had a purpose for this trip, which was to maximize their clan's benefits. Murong Yan glanced sideways at Arbor and nodded very politely. Before he could speak, he heard Murong Zhao say, he's one of us. Chapter 48-48. Eldest brother, this is little aunt's direct disciple. Murong Yan belatedly glanced at the little girl with an expression of sudden realization. Ah, it's that one from planet Sikong's holy water sect. No wonder younger sister said the little girl looked familiar at first glance. It turned out she really was one of them. Little aunt's direct disciple was no different from the Murong family's direct disciple. Murong Yan hastily said with a smile, please forgive me for not recognizing Miss earlier. The little stoic's face was still stoic, but her eyes were brimming with vigor. She glanced at Murong Yan and pretended not to care. No need to take it to heart. Before she could finish speaking, she saw Murong Yan take out a small box from his inner world and hand it to Arbor. Little junior sister, you don't mind me calling you this, right? Take this small item and treat it as senior brother's greeting gift to you. It's just a trifling item. It's a few formations that senior brother made himself and can be used at any time. The belated siblings, Murong Zhao and Murong Fei, also hastily took out gifts and piled them in the little stoic's hands. Little junior sister, we'll be a family from now on. Don't be afraid, even if little aunt is no longer here, our Murong family of Forget River will still be your strong backing. Murong Fei paused and asked in confusion, speaking of which, where have you been all these years? After the Holy Water sect was destroyed back then, the Murong family of Forget River actually sent a group of people to stand guard outside Planet Seekong's Holy Water sect for several months. In the end, they didn't find a single Holy Water sect disciple, which was truly a huge setback. They only withdrew everyone half a year later. At that time, those clansmen reported that there was no one alive in the Holy Water sect. All the uncles, elders, and uncles in the clan were extremely furious and had been investigating this matter for many years. However, due to heavenly law's obstruction at that time, they didn't dare to extend their hands too far. They had been investigating in secret, and their progress was very slow. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she silently took back the gifts the little brothers and sisters handed her. She said, "It's a long story." The three people, strange, why did they suddenly feel awkward? "It's a long story." The little stoic said with a conflicted expression, "I'll tell you when I have time in the future." Of course, it was impossible for her to tell them about it. It would be better to bring them to the current Holy Water sect and send a talkative senior sister to tell them about it. Murong Fei smiled happily, "That's good too." The little stoic's mouth twitched. She originally wanted to tell them that Murong Sun might still be saved. But on second thought, in order to avoid having too much hope and too much disappointment, it was better not to talk about it for now. Perhaps in the future, he would be able to save his master. At that time, he would let his family meet. Wouldn't it be better to be surprised and happy? "Everyone, are you done catching up?" Eldest young Sir Qin strolled over with a grin and glanced at the little girl's calm face. Bah, this little girl still wanted to lie to him. She was clearly very happy and excited on the inside. If it weren't for them being present, perhaps the little stoic would have already pulled that Miss Murong intimately to the side to chat. "Jojo, is it okay if you share a tent with Miss Murong tonight?" Arbor nodded without any objections, but Murong Fei appeared very happy. "You've stayed on this sea turtle island for 2 days already, right?" Before Arbor could complain, eldest young Sir Qin nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, everything is ready. We're just waiting for your key." Murong Fei's hand reached into her bosom. Chapter 48-49. He took out a very ordinary cloth pouch and poured out a gilded copper key from it before handing it to eldest young Sir Qin. Eldest young Sir accepted it very politely with a smile. At the same time, he took out 4 other gilded copper keys that looked exactly the same in terms of specifications and quality. When the 5 keys were placed together, they emitted a bright glow under the sunlight. Arbor's large eyes glanced at those 5 keys before retracting her gaze. Eldest young Sir Qin walked to her side with a smile. "Jojo, I'll leave these keys to you for safekeeping." Arbor looked at him strangely. Eldest young Sir chuckled and placed all 5 keys in her hands. "All right, you can go rest. Today, 5th brother told me that you didn't take an afternoon nap. You must be exhausted, right?" Arbor rolled her eyes. She really wanted to refute that her sister didn't need to take an afternoon nap every day. Recently, she had been working too hard in order to recover her divine sense as soon as possible. Who took an afternoon nap? The little fellow put away the 5 keys and silently glanced at eldest young Sir before walking towards her tent. Murong Fei hastily followed and excitedly asked, little junior sister Jojo, with my condition, we still have to stay here for 4 to 5 days?" Arbor nodded and led her towards her tent. The entrance to the Pond Lotus sacred realm had to be opened, or else they wouldn't even be able to enter the secret realm's main entrance. Along the way, the island was barren without any resources other than rocks and sand. A row of tents of various sizes were crowded together on the sand and rocks, forming a circle of varying heights. I see that this tent area is quite crowded. The Qin estate of the Divine Province must have emptied most of their assets and moved all of them to the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm, right? We saved more than 20 people along the way, Arbor explained reluctantly. Murong Fei absent-mindedly glanced behind her, and her gaze suddenly turned sluggish. Sensing the change in her aura, the little stoic also glanced behind her without batting an eyelid. She saw that warm-hearted eldest sister-in-law Yang helping the sickly Miss Fong out of a small tent and slowly walking forward along the sandy ground. A few able-bodied laborers were helping the duo clan members to repair a few collapsed tents. Last night, the wind was so strong that several tents were blown over. If these were not repaired today, the existing tents would be even more crowded. At this moment, Miss Fong also saw the nearby arbor from the distance of a few strong men who were fixing tents. A hint of fear and dread flashed in his eyes. Previously, it was this woman who had said decisively that she would chop off one of her brother's legs. In the end, his poor brother really did lose a leg. Her younger brother was still so young. How was she going to support him in the future? These hateful practitioners were all high and mighty, dominating the lives and futures of the weak. They were extremely hateful. Arbor glanced at Miss Fong and then retracted his gaze. His brows unconsciously furrowed. In that instant, she could feel Miss Fong's intense resentment. This girl actually resented him. Arbor shook his head. What's wrong? Murong Fei keenly sensed that there seemed to be some animosity between Arbor and Miss Fong. Speaking of which, it was strange. How could a quiet person like the little stoic have a conflict with Miss Fong? Arbor led Murong Fei back to his tent. Senior sister. Chapter 4850. The little stoic said with a stoic face, "Go rest first and come out to eat in a bit." Fuck, what is that thing? Quick, quick. Get out of the way. Hurry and disperse. It's crashing down, a series of exclamations rang out. Arbor looked up and saw a bird-shaped flying device crookedly crashing into the tent area ahead. That collision looked like it was going to destroy heaven and earth. Everyone screamed as they fled from their tents one after another and swarmed toward the area where Arbor and Murong Fei were standing. From afar, they saw that bird-shaped flying spirit tool somersaulting a few times in the air before swooping down toward the ground. Boom! After a loud noise, the front cabin of the flying spirit tool plunged into the sandy ground, raising a row of tents nearby to the ground. A duo clansman was strenuously propping up a tent. When he saw this scene, he was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth in time and ate a mouthful of dirt on the spot. The tent that had just been set up in front of him was torn to pieces with a crash. Everything fell apart. Young Master Omega Kotoku rushed over when he heard the commotion and hastily ran to the little stoic side to ask, "Are you all right?" Arbor was baffled. What could happen to her? She was already quite a distance away from where the flying spirit tool had crashed. What problem could there be? Young Master Omega Kotoku sized her up. Seeing that she was indeed fine, he nodded and instructed, "Stay here and don't move." The little stoic. It was really annoying. Everyone always liked to say this to her. After glaring at Omega Kotoku's back, the little stoic tugged at Murong Fei beside her. "Let's go over and take a look." Murong Fei's lips curved. How could she not watch a good show? She naturally agreed gladly. The two of them quietly ran over. When they got closer, they saw a large circle of people gathered there. There was a large pit in the middle. Half of a bird-shaped flying spirit tool was buried in the pit. It took a long time for the door of the air transportation spiritual tool to finally open from the inside. A brownish-yellow spirit dog that was barking madly jumped out from inside. When it saw the group of people staring at each other, it didn't care about anything else and barked at them. Until a lazy voice called out, "Shut up." Only then did the big fellow stop its incessant barking. It hopped over to the side of the spirit tool cabin and used its claws to crawl down the cabin door. He saw a young man in white who looked to be about 20 years old climb out of the spirit tool cabin. She raised her hand and patted the dog's head. Then, she turned her beautiful eyes and met the Omega Kotoku's lukewarm gaze. So it's young Master Yun from Shangyuanqing. It seemed that Omega Kotoku recognized the person in front of him. Arbor thought for a moment, then he took a few steps forward and stood a little closer to Murong Fei, watching the show. "Ah, it's really a small world." That young Sir Yun pretended to be surprised and then lazily walked forward. "Qin Estate's second young sir, you also came to Lotus Pond Island for a vacation." "Vacation my ass." Everyone rolled their eyes at him. "You came to this lousy island for a vacation and almost destroyed the entire tent area as soon as you arrived, as if the holy domain collided with the divine continent. Yet, you could still show such a harmless expression. You were simply asking for a beating. Is that not the case?" Young Sir Yun was surprised. "This humble one came here for a wonderful vacation. I heard that the people of Wang River are beautiful, and the mountains, rivers, and scenery are all beautiful." Chapter 48-51. He paused, and his gaze landed on Arbor. Suddenly, his eyes brightened, and he exclaimed, "Wow! There's an exquisite and wonderful person here." Young Master Omega Kotoku scooted a few steps in front of him and blocked his wanton sizing-up gaze. "Your Yun family also wants a share of the loot." "What do you mean?" Young Master Yun asked innocently. "Share what loot?" "This young master said that I came here for a vacation." Enough, enough. He knew that he wouldn't get any information from this person even if he rambled on. Young Master Omega Kotoku gruffly interrupted him. "Yun Yunji, so what if you're here? Can't you be more reliable and do things properly?" Young Master Yun hastily apologized. Sorry, the forgetfulness river is too vast. Before setting off, Elder Brother already reminded me that I can't use the air transportation spirit weapon because it's easy to get lost. I have to take a boat. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to Elder Brother, and as a result, we've been wandering around the Forgetfulness River for almost 10 days, and there's really nothing we can do about it after running out of spirit stones. This young master also didn't want to fall down. Unfortunately, it really can't hold on any longer. As they spoke, a dozen or so people continuously crawled out of the spirit weapon cabin. Each of them had a dumbfounded expression as they looked around. A burly man nearly 2 meters tall like an iron tower quickly walked up and asked with a bow, "Young master, you're not injured, right?" Young Master Yun glanced askance at him. "Do you think this young master looks injured when he's talking cheerfully and wittily? All right, move to the side." He circled around the Omega Kotoku young master blocking his way and walked towards the little stoic. However, a white figure flashed in front of him, and eldest young Master Qin also floated over from the side and blocked his path with a grin. "Little third Yun, did you come to the mystic realm to look for treasures?" "Ah, eldest young master, hello. Yun Yunji walked up very politely and cupped his fists in greeting at eldest young Master Qin. This young master came here to sightsee. Eldest young Master Qin and young Master Omega Kotoku rolled their eyes at the same time. What? Based on what you're saying, there's a secret realm that's about to open. Young Master Yun blinked his doggy eyes and asked curiously, can I bring my men in with me? After all, I can also gain some knowledge. First young master and second young master complained in their hearts at the same time. If I said I wouldn't bring you along, would you obediently stay here and not follow me? What was she pretending for? She was even better at pretending to be a little black lotus than Mo Lien. He really wanted to stomp on him a dozen times. Yun Yunji finally circled around the two young masters who were like wooden stumps and swiftly flew to the little stoic side. He said with a grin, "Ah, nice to meet you, little miss. I'm Yun Yunji from the Yun family. How about we get to know each other? You're a member of Shangyuan City's Yun family." Murong Fei was vigilant as she raised her hand to shield the little stoic and pulled her back. That's right, that's right. Murong Fei did not say anything as she threw a punch towards his face. Yun Yunji couldn't react in time. His handsome face took a solid hit, and he felt as if the sky was about to collapse. The little stoic stood next to the two people, and her small mouth involuntarily curled up when she saw this scene. She purposely moved to the side and opened up a path for Murong Fei to show off. She punched left and right, sparing no effort. Young Master Yun, who was grinning cheekily, was still pretending to cry out in pain at the beginning, but in the end, it was really fucking painful. Chapter 48-52. There was truly no justice in this world. Of the two ladies in front of him, although the little stoic looked icy and expressionless, her appearance was truly fair and adorable and very eye-catching. As for the slightly taller lady next to the stoic man, although she was inferior to the stoic man, she was also very good-looking. Yun Yunji felt that he had never been so unlucky in his life. Not only was he beaten up by a beautiful lady, but he was also being watched expressionlessly by another one. Stop, 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 please stop. Yun Yunji could only hastily shout, "Miss, what exactly is going on? Why are you beating me, I-oh?" At the start, he could still shout, but in the end, he had no choice but to retaliate in self-defense. In the end, the most ridiculous thing happened. As soon as he retaliated, the little stoic, who was originally watching from the side, suddenly pulled out a wooden club and hastily shouted, "Senior sister, you're not fighting alone." She swung that shiny golden club and rushed forward, ganging up on Yun Yunji with Murong Fei. Everyone, eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but twitch his mouth, feeling that he couldn't bear to watch. After being hit twice by the club, Yun Yunji felt that if he retaliated against the little stoic again, he might be even more unlucky. Thus, he didn't retaliate again and just kept fleeing outside, almost colliding head-on with fifth young Sir Qin, who was walking over with a plate of pastries. What happened? Fifth young Sir glanced at them in astonishment. Just now, he was preparing food in the distance when he heard the huge commotion, so he hurried over to take a look. The little stoic silently put away that golden club and bounced to fifth young Sir's side, adeptly helping him take the plate in his hand. "Don't eat too much, it'll be dinner soon," fifth young Sir instructed. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't help but facepalm. He kept feeling that this fifth brother of his was becoming more and more like a little stoic bodyguard he had to exhort him for everything. "What's wrong?" Fifth young Sir looked up at his eldest brother and second brother. When Yun Yunji saw the little stoic walking past him with a plate, his mouth couldn't help but twitch as he shouted, "Why did you hit me?" The little stoic thought for a moment before swallowing half a pastry and answering, "I can't let senior sister fight alone." Murong Fei couldn't resist beaming with joy. This little junior sister that he had just reunited with was truly too interesting. Little Aunt really had good taste. How did she find such an interesting little stoic disciple for her? The corner of Yun Yunji's mouth twitched. "Then do you know that this senior sister of yours is very problematic? She hit me all of a sudden. She didn't even have a reason for hitting me. Don't you think this is wrong?" The little stoic nodded. It's a bit off. Yunji, why did you step forward to help the tiger do evil? You have no integrity, you little rascal. There's nothing I can do about it. She's my senior sister. Yunji became even more melancholic and speechless. But I'm still your senior brother. Do you know? Our Shangyuan City's Yun clan is the clan of your mentor, the principal of the Royal Academy, Yun Piaomiao. So when you beat up Yun Piaomiao's nephew, your proper senior brother, do you think you did the right thing? The little stoic's eyes instantly brightened. Yunji felt an inexplicable sense of panic. Fuck, what's going on? This stoic face doesn't look like a happy reunion. You're the nephew of Dean Yun. That's right, I'm your senior brother, Yunji. Senior sister, hit. The little stoic hollered and rushed forward again. Chapter 48-53. This idiot in front of him was actually Yun Piaomiao's eldest nephew. This was really great. In the past, due to his respect for his teachers, he couldn't find any reason to beat up the headmaster who tricked him. Now, his fat nephew had personally delivered himself to his doorstep to be beaten up. It simply couldn't be any better. This fellow was in a great mood and directly stuffed the plate into the fifth young master's hands. Without another word, he took out that golden club and smashed it at Yunji. Murong Fei secretly exclaimed in her heart, "This is really my biological junior sister." She drew her sword and fought together. She hastily withdrew her hand and followed up. The two of them flew forward one after the other. The club whooshed through the wind, and their fists rained down. Without another word, they gave Yunji another round of fat beatings. A few Yun family members were so anxious that they wanted to go forward and help, but they were stopped by another handsome young master who had a smile on his face. It's fine. Old Third likes to be pretentious. It's not a bad idea to let him get beaten up and learn from his mistakes. Besides, he's very resistant to beatings. Everyone, they wondered if the young master would feel guilty when he said this. Their family's third young master was actually chased and beaten by two girls until he fled in panic with an ashen face. Truly pitiful. Eldest Omega Kotoku was speechless. Seeing Yunji get beaten up from the east to the west and then chased back to the east, he instantly sympathized with this person. When he looked at this fellow just now, he felt that his words were rather infuriating and really wanted to beat him up. He didn't expect Jojo to help him without another word. He was really a rather awesome little stoic. At this moment, young Master Omega Kotoku's anger also subsided a lot, and his heart also felt much more at ease. This fellow watched coldly from the sidelines as that unlucky Yunji dodged his attacks here and there without the slightest ripple in his eyes. You deserve it. You should have met someone like Qiao Qiao, who would beat you up until you couldn't speak. Hey, stoic. Senior brother was wrong, all right. Don't hit me. Don't hit me. Senior brother said, to tell the truth, I said it. Yes. Senior brother has long recognized you. More than 80% of the Yun family had probably flipped through the stoic face's information. Not only did this girl study under Murong Sun, but she also entered Yun Fur and Yun Piaomiao's academy and studied there for a period of time, so she had a close relationship with them. Furthermore, this little girl was an out-and-out genius. In the entire Yun family of Shangyuan City, there was not a single person who could compare with this little girl in terms of talent. In just a few short years, this child had grown to such a level. Although she might have had many fortuitous encounters along the way, the degree of her bone structure and aptitude was definitely not to be doubted. The Mu family of the Divine Prefecture and the Dragon family of Wangchuan were actually making such a fuss over such a dazzling little genius. From the looks of it, the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture seemed to have repented, but the Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness. It seemed that there would be no Dragon Clan of Forgetfulness in the future. Yunji wiped his face and took a step back. He grinned and said, "Little junior sister, why don't we make peace? Don't hit senior brother." In actuality, the little stoic hadn't done anything for a long time. She exercised a bit. On one hand, it would be helpful for her afternoon nap later, and on the other hand, she could treat it as training. If they went overboard, she would have to worry about whether or not it would affect her child. Little junior sister. Who's your little junior sister? Murong Fei irritably shouted at him. The 100-year grievances between the Murong clan and the Yun family truly could not be resolved in a short period of time. Back then, because of the Yun family's ancestor, the Murong clan fled the Divine Prefecture and moved to Wangchuan. Chapter 48-54. The two families had been in conflict for the past 100 years. Although circumstances had changed with the passage of time, the conflict between the two families still existed. Especially in the previous generation, the matter between youngest aunt and that person caused a commotion between the two families, but it wasn't resolved properly in the end. When Murong Fei thought of this, she couldn't help but sigh deeply. When facing Yunji, she put on a completely ladylike face. "Speak, what is your purpose for coming here?" To take a perfect, fake vacation." Yunji stuttered after being yelled at by her. Arbor glanced at him and raised his small hand, intending to pat his shoulder sympathetically. However, the latter was probably scared by her wooden club, so when he saw her raise her small hand, his instinctive reaction was to shrink back. The noodle vendor glanced at his hand and silently put it back down. She stroked her small belly comfortingly in passing. "Child, Mom isn't this irritable every day." The main thing was that when they met, their eyes were exceptionally red. In the past, she was tricked by Headmaster Yun to the point of vomiting. Now that she could finally trick his fat nephew, she was especially excited. Now that she had her own child, she would inexplicably think of Long Chu-yun when she thought of all sorts of things. Speaking of which, when she was in Long Chu-yun's belly back then, she was definitely very obedient and quiet like her own child. Her child would probably be like her. She didn't know what the little fellow thought of, but a faint smile actually appeared on her face. It was truly a rare sight. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist taking a few more glances at her before his gaze landed on Yunji. "Little third Yun, look at the good deeds you've done. Have your men clean up these lousy tents for me." Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at him disdainfully. "Take out more tents and supplies. Treat it as your compensation." When the little stoic heard the word compensation, her eyes abruptly lit up. The eldest young sir was about to end the conversation, but when he saw the little stoic's shining eyes, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Recalling the little fellow's past tricks, he hastily added, 20 million spirit coins as compensation. "I won't let you off if it's a single cent less." Yunji's handsome face immediately turned a bit green. "Why don't you go rob someone? Did the Qin estate's eldest young sir change his profession to become a bandit? How can robbing be as quick as cheating you?" Eldest young Sir Qin thought to himself, "Are you going to give it to me or not? If you don't want to give it to me, then scram. This Lotus Pond Island belongs to your family." Yunji was speechless. How could there be such a rude person in this world? The little stoic's eyes brightened again when she heard this. Eldest young Sir Qin suppressed his belly full of laughter and nodded with great difficulty. "That's right, we have an island master here." Yunji was dumbfounded. Why hadn't he heard that this Lotus Pond Island had an owner? "May I ask who the island master is?" The little stoic took 2 steps forward. Yunji didn't react for a moment, and said to her with a smile, "Little junior sister, we're a family. You definitely won't cheat your senior brother. Do you know who the owner of this island is? The little stoic took another 3 steps towards him. Yunji was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed, "It's you." It was obvious. The small island owner nodded and looked at him with sincerity. Then all right. Yunji thought for less than 3 seconds before he hastily nodded. He fished out a spirit coin card from his sleeve and handed it to the little stoic, saying, "Keep the goodies within the family. You're my little junior sister, so this money is well spent for you." Eldest young Sir Chin twitched his mouth and didn't want to pay attention to this Yunji. Chapter 48-56. On the other side, after the eldest young master gave the order, 4 or 5 sturdy attendants quickly walked over. Each of them took out a set of armor made of iron sheet from their inner worlds and put it on, then shook the ropes on their hands. Several ropes were wrapped around the black thing on the ground, firmly holding it in place. They stood in a triangular formation and tightened the ropes in their hands. The thing that was bound by them once again let out an angry roar that sounded like a human roar. The black shadow suddenly moved, revealing 2 small, sharp fangs. It bared its fangs and roared at the people around it. Only then did the people who rushed over see clearly what the black shadow was. It turned out to be Miss Fong's little brother, who was 8 or 9 years old. At this moment, he was standing there on one leg. His originally delicate and cute little face was now covered in alternating black and red lines of blood. His eyes were terrifyingly filled with a bloody light. When he looked at people, his eyelids would lift, and his eyeballs would roll up from the bottom, revealing eerie black pupils. Everyone glanced at him and felt a chill run down their spines. Who would have thought that such an adorable child would inexplicably mutate? Wasn't he fine yesterday? The bodyguards didn't get close to the little zombie and instead used ropes to bind it. Then, they pulled and tugged a few times, dragging the zombie that was hopping on one leg and taking a few steps forward. "No, you can't deal with him." Miss Fong came to her senses and couldn't help but shriek angrily. She opened her arms to block that person. A pair of rippling eyes glared angrily at Arbor, containing a bit of resentment. Arbor expressed that he was innocently implicated. Was there something wrong with this girl? Of all the people she could glare at, why did she have to glare at Sir Jojo? Did this Sir Jojo look easy to bully? It was simply baffling. "Didn't you say that my brother would be fine?" Lady Fong yelled hysterically. "Look at him, look at him, look at him. Look at him now. You were the one who swore that his corpse poison hadn't spread into his bloodline. Now, you're also the one who's watching my poor brother being dealt with. Give me back my brother. Give me back." Miss Fong was anxious and angry. She was so angry that she almost couldn't catch her breath. Her body went limp and she was about to fall backward. Eldest sister-in-law Yang and a few other women hurriedly supported her. Eldest sister-in-law Yang placed her hand on Miss Fong's chest and hurriedly soothed her. She hurriedly said, "Miss Fong, if there's anything, let's talk nicely." "Ah, don't be so agitated. Miss Fong, let's talk nicely." "How can we talk nicely?" Miss Fong angrily pushed Mrs. Yang and the others' hands away and shouted at Arbor, "It's her, it's her. What a liar. He even lied to me that my brother would be fine. He said that he would be fine after we cut off his leg. What was the result? Not only did you cause my younger brother extreme pain, but you're also mutating now. Ah! Why are you treating us like this? Why are you doing this?" Arbor looked at Miss Fong with a strange expression. Jojo Sama was called a liar. She blinked and lowered her head to look at young Master Fong. Then, she looked up at Miss Fong and said with a stoic expression, "I didn't lie to you." Miss Fong's brother could indeed be saved that day. But now, the truth was right before their eyes. Young Master Fong had mutated. What did this mean? It could only mean one thing. Arbor raised his head and looked deeply at Miss Fong. Chapter 48-57. That day, a drop of mucus was sprayed on young Master Fong's leg, but it hadn't spread yet. She wasn't wrong at the time. Cutting off his leg decisively could effectively prevent the corpse poison from spreading to other areas. Logically speaking, this young Master Fong shouldn't have shown such a strange change. Unless he had taken some unknown medicine in the past 2 days. Arbor gazed calmly at Miss Fong. His scorching gaze was like a flame burning fiercely in the depths of Miss Fong's heart. Anger burned this Miss Fong to the brink of delirium. She suddenly let out an ear-piercing shriek. "Don't quibble anymore. Don't deny it. You actually made an error in judgment." Miss Fong shouted harshly. "Because of you, my younger brother lost a leg and still couldn't save his life. Since that's the case, then why did you cut off his leg back then? What's the use of cutting it off? Isn't it just to make him suffer another round of pain and suffering at such a young age? You vicious woman, what are you after? Why do you want to harm us too? Ah!" Miss Fong was halfway through her yelling when a guard suddenly walked up and locked her arms. Miss Fong struggled and roared angrily, "What are you doing? This woman dares to do such a vicious thing. Don't tell me she won't tell others. Vicious woman, you vicious woman, ah." Young Master Omega Kotoku flicked his sleeve and slapped Miss Fong heavily. Miss Fong only felt a fishy sweetness fill her mouth when the tremendous force hit her, and her face also tilted to one side due to the impact. Second young master's expression was very unsightly, and his eyes were filled with impatience as he said, "What are you waiting for? Drag them both out to see if they don't want to stay here." Eldest young Master Chin said indifferently, "Deal with the little zombie as soon as possible. Everyone else, return to your tents. There's nothing else to do, rest well." The Chin Estate's guards immediately pulled on the ropes and dragged the little zombie that had flared up. They also tied Miss Fong, who was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, behind her back and were about to send them off. "Wait!" Arbor called out to the Chin Estate's guards indifferently. A pair of beautiful almond-shaped eyes looked deeply at Miss Fong. "Let me ask you, did you give your brother any medicine in the past 2 days?" At this time, Miss Fong's eyes were bloodshot and she looked like she had gone mad. Hearing this, she said without thinking, "Among our companions, there is a person who knows a little about medicine." She had given her younger brother some nutritious soup and used some medicine to stop bleeding and remove scars. "Don't tell me you want to accuse someone else." "I don't want to wrongly accuse anyone," Arbor said calmly, "but I won't be framed for no reason. If she didn't clear things up today, would she have to carry the blame forever?" Although Miss Fong's way of thinking was quite strange. She had only kindly advised little brother Fong to cut off his legs to save his life, but now that little brother Fong had turned into a corpse, it became her fault. "Go and get the dregs for me to take a look." I'll get it. For the past 2 days, eldest sister-in-law Yang had warmly helped brew the medicine and took care of the Fong siblings. Before long, this eldest sister-in-law brought over the dregs and presented them to Arbor. Arbor carefully inspected it and looked up at Miss Fong. "There's nothing wrong with this medicine." Eldest sister-in-law Yang and a worker simultaneously heaved sighs of relief. If there was a problem with this medicine, wouldn't both of them be out of luck? Chapter 48-58. After all, one of them prescribed the medicine, and the other was responsible for taking care of young Sir Fong. If there was a problem with the medicine, then they could hardly absolve themselves from the blame. Miss Fong glared at Arbor with a mocking expression. What exactly are you trying to prove by doing so many senseless things? Arbor swept a cold glance at Miss Fong, causing the latter to swallow back the words she wanted to shout. This little stoic's eyes were bright and sharp, causing people to feel a bit fearful, Miss Fong thought. You yourself are well aware of what you fed your younger brother. Miss Fong's heart thumped heavily, and then she glared at Arbor with widened eyes. What nonsense are you babbling about? You didn't wrongly accuse anyone else just now, so now you're making a false countercharge and want to wrongly accuse me. Your younger brother was normal before today, right? Sister-in-law Yang subconsciously nodded. That's right. When I delivered the medicine to young Sir Fong this afternoon, there weren't any changes. Looking at the extent of his mutation, he should have taken the basic mutation medicinal fluid this afternoon. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Miss Fong with odd gazes. After noticing everyone's complicated gazes, Miss Fong appeared flustered. She hastily waved her hands and shouted, No, it's not what you think. I didn't. Arbor glanced at her indifferently and flicked a dictum talisman into Miss Fong's glabella like a streak of light. Still not telling the truth. Her voice was chilly, and her gaze was emotionless and apathetic. Miss Fong glanced at her and couldn't help but tremble all over. Her mouth kept opening and closing, but she couldn't control it at all. I also didn't want to. Do you think I wanted to? My younger brother lost his legs, so he wouldn't stop crying in the middle of the night. That person told me that as long as I took his special medicine, 3 days, my younger brother would recover. How would I know what kind of mutation medicinal fluid it was? Why would I harm my own younger brother? Miss Fong screamed in a heart-wrenching rage. That person told me that as long as I took the medicine, my broken bones could regenerate. Perhaps my younger brother would be able to recover in the future. Everyone looked at Miss Fong with disbelief and speechlessness. This Miss Fong was truly innocent to the extreme. How could she believe such nonsense? Did he really take that precious medicine and give it to his younger brother to drink? She had wrongly trusted others and caused her younger brother to become like this, yet she had previously blamed the little stoic girl, saying that she had made a mistake in her judgment. This was really a case of a thief crying out to catch a thief and making a false accusation. Miss. Gu Dazhong hurriedly ran over, wanting to stop her from continuing. The way everyone looked at him as if he was an idiot was too obvious. Now that Miss had made such a ruckus, all her reputation had been ruined by her. The worst part was that the members of the Murong family were also present. The young lady's crazed look was all seen by Master Murong. Originally, others were indifferent to her. Now that this matter had blown up, it was all over. She can't cultivate and she's stupid. How could the Murong family accept such a daughter-in-law? Arbor looked at Miss Fong coldly. Originally, he didn't want to pay any attention to this young lady, but this person opened her mouth and pinned a crime on her head. In that case, he had to clear things up with her. Right and wrong, everyone had to lay out everything clearly. Of course, Miss Fong might not have foreseen this outcome beforehand, so she couldn't bear it. Chapter 48-59. Miss Fong abruptly snapped back to her senses and forcefully broke free from a Qin estate guard. She raised her hand to her throat and glared at Arbor in shock. What did she just say? Why did she feel like she had said a lot just now? After receiving everyone's unconcealed disdainful gazes, Miss Fong's mind sobered up, and she hastily reached out to grab the dumbstruck eldest sister-in-law Yang. Eldest sister-in-law Yang. Eldest sister-in-law Yang hastily flung her hand away and staggered back 2 steps. She said with an incredulous expression, Miss Fong, you are too stupid. Eldest sister-in-law Yang really didn't want to attack this unlucky girl with a deathly pale complexion, but the word stupid still jumped out from between her teeth. It had to be said that this Miss Fong was too ridiculously stupid. Even an inexperienced woman like her wouldn't so easily believe a complete stranger, right? She took the medicine and fed it to her younger brother just because someone said it would be useful. Didn't she consider that this medicinal liquid might harm her younger brother's life? I didn't. Miss Fong's tears fell like rain as she shook her head repeatedly and looked pleadingly at Manager Gu. Gu Dazhong was about to cry from this ignorant eldest Miss stupidity. His lips twitched for a long time before he finally sputtered, "Miss, why didn't you discuss it with me before doing something?" Miss Fong wailed loudly, "It has nothing to do with me. That person lied to me. He lied to me. Alright, don't listen to her nonsense. She was the one who harmed her younger brother's life." Eldest young Sir Chin interrupted apathetically. She couldn't bear the responsibility for the victim's life, yet she turned around and accused someone else of harming him. "We don't welcome such a vile and crude person here. Right, we don't welcome her. We don't welcome her." Everyone kicked up a fuss and kept shouting, "Get out of our camp. Throw her into the sea. Let her have a taste of what it's like to fend for herself." "No, don't, Uncle Gu. Miss Fong reached out to grab Manager Gu's sleeve and desperately grabbed his hand. Manager Gu hastily pacified the surrounding crowd and smoothed things over with a smile. Everyone, don't be so agitated. Who gave you the basic mutated medicinal liquid?" Xiao Mu's cold voice cut through the commotion, instantly dispersing the clamorous atmosphere by quite a bit. Everyone thought that it was more important to figure out who gave her the medicinal liquid. Although Fong Gongzi was the only victim in this incident, the mysterious person hiding in the dark was the key to the whole incident. Why did he appear in the camp? Why did he have such a basic medicinal liquid? So, among these people there were spies from the Heavenly Fate Palace. "Young miss, quickly explain yourself." Steward Gu was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. If the young miss was thrown out of the camp at this moment, how would she, the young miss of a rich family, live? Steward Gu's heart was anxious. When he turned around and saw Murong Yen and Murong Zhao, he rushed over and pulled on the two of them, saying, "Young Master Murong, quickly save my family's young Mississippi. She was insensible and made a mistake, but please, for my family's master's sake, please help her." "I don't know. I really don't know anything." Miss Fong cried. "That person appeared in front of me with his face covered. I was worried about my younger brother, so I believed him." Chapter 4860. Eldest young Sir Chin coldly swept Miss Fong a glance and said apathetically, "Take her away. Let go of me. You dare to treat me like this? You guys. Let go." Miss Fong shouted angrily, but she was rudely dragged out of the crowd by the royal guards. Mississippi Manager Gu hastily chased after her, hopping with anxiety. This time, the Qin Estate's royal guards didn't waste words with Miss Fong and directly grabbed her arm, dragging the wailing Miss Fong out. Murong Yen and Murong Zhao silently met each other's eyes before silently shaking their heads and retracting their gazes. Fortunately, they had called off the engagement with this Miss Fong long ago. If they really married this person, with her IQ, wouldn't their family have no peaceful days in the future? After retracting her gaze, Xiao Mu's gaze seemed to roam around the crowd. After returning to her tent, the little stoic sat at the table and subconsciously turned a cup in her hand. She remained silent for a long time. Murong Fei yawned. Just as she was about to pull open the blankets to continue sleeping, she saw the little stoic pondering when she turned around. "What's wrong?" Murong Fei opened her mouth and paused with one hand tugging at a corner of the blankets. Xiao Mu returned to her senses and turned to look at her. "It's fine, go rest." Murong Fei lifted the blankets and crawled to the short table next to her. She picked up a clean teacup and poured a cup of water, saying with a smile, "Don't worry, only Miss Fong, that dumb person, would fall for such a shallow trick. Anyone with a bit of vigilance probably wouldn't." Arbor suddenly reached out and pressed down on the back of her hand. Murong Fei's hand abruptly paused, and her hand was pressed down. The teacup made a fine clatter and landed on the short table. Arbor reached out to take the teacup and sniffed it with knitted brows before saying gravely, "This tea can't be drunk." Murong Fei jolted in fright, and a nervous expression instantly appeared on her face. "But you also drank it just now. It's not the tea's problem." Arbor took out a small knife and scraped a layer of powder off the cup's rim. Murong Fei immediately clenched her 5 fingers, her entire body stiffened as she sat up straight. "It's the mouth of the cup that was smeared with powder. Hurry up and inform your 2 brothers." The moment Arbor's words fell, Murong Fei could not care less about her disheveled appearance as she hurriedly put on an outer robe and dashed out. Arbor also chased after him, only to see the tent beside him move slightly, and a black shadow flashed past. The little stoic sneered and stopped. Formation map. She flicked out a piece of paper from under her sleeve. The formation map turned into a shadow and instantly enveloped the camp. With the place where she stood as the starting point, a trapping array was set up in a matter of minutes. Dozens of flying needles shot out from her body and flew in all directions of the formation. Did he really think that everyone was as stupid as Miss Fong? If he lured her out, she would chase after him alone. Ha! She was not going to chase after him. At this time, the black-clothed man hidden in the shadows couldn't help but curse inwardly. This really is a little pervert, completely not following the rules. Currently, the camp was surrounded by a trapping array. If he wanted to forcefully break out, he would definitely be seen through. This damn girl, he didn't expect that he would be forcefully made a fool out of by this girl. He originally thought that after the incident just now, the damn girl would definitely be physically and mentally exhausted. He didn't expect her to still be so vigilant and detect the abnormality at the rim of the cup in less than a second. The camp that had quieted down for less than an hour started clamoring again. Chapter 48-61. Arbor used a formation diagram to construct a trapping formation, making it impossible for the black-clothed person to escape. After locking onto this person's aura, she touched the little white snake coiled around her wrist. The little white snake immediately turned into an extremely thin white shadow and abruptly scuttled into the dark night. Arbor narrowed her eyes. After taking a few steps, she saw everyone pouring out of their tents. The commoners all looked a bit alarmed, and they anxiously asked after looking back and forth, "What happened? What now? It can't be that a monster is attacking the camp, right?" Young Master Omega Kotoku lifted the tent flap and involuntarily knitted his brows when he saw the clamorous scene before him. Too many things had happened today. He didn't expect another wave to rise before one wave had even subsided. They hadn't even entered the Pond Lotus sacred realm yet. Who the hell knew how many more deceptive things would happen after they entered? Arbor drew a tracking talisman in the air and sent it flying with a flick of her finger. Then, she leisurely walked toward her target. A moment later, the great void serpent's 3-meter-long figure flashed past and suddenly coiled around Arbor, pulling her several dozen meters back. At the same time, flames soared into the sky and exploded inside the camp with a loud explosion. Arbor's eyes instantly turned several degrees colder and harsher, and an indecipherable glimmer flickered in her eyes. Her gaze landed on the raging flames, and it was so cold that people couldn't discern the emotions in her eyes. A dozen or so Qin estate guards hastily rushed over, and the water spiritualists quickly brought the fiery scene under control. "How's the situation?" Eldest Qin walked over with quick steps, a bit of worry hanging on his face. Reporting to eldest young master, "It's fine. It's all under control now." Eldest Qin glanced at Arbor and saw the little stoic's frosty face being coiled around by the great void serpent that was several dozen meters long. The serpent shrunk bit by bit and turned into a slender little white snake. It wore a small crown on its head, and its small head was tilted. It no longer had its giant tail, and its pair of watery eyes looked adorably at the frightened commoners around them. When they saw this several dozen meters long serpent just now, everyone was stupefied. Some were so scared that their legs went soft and they couldn't walk. There were also people who were shrouded in fear, crying and screaming. It was truly a lively scene. "Is everyone all right?" Old Steward Luo ran over from behind with his fat belly. Arbor's cold gaze slid past the old manager and swept past the faces of everyone present. In the end, his gaze landed on the few young masters of the Qin estate. "Someone wants my life, do you know that?" The eldest young master's face darkened slightly, and he hurriedly nodded and said, "Jojo, don't worry. We will do our best to investigate this matter." Arbor looked at him with a deep gaze. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly, revealing a trace of a smile that was not a smile. "Oh. Who do you think this person can break into the camp at night and accurately find me in so many large tents?" Old Steward Luo frowned slightly and tried to smooth things over with an apologetic smile. "Little miss, this is just an accident. Someone trespassed into the camp, and the young masters didn't know about it. But to put it bluntly, the Qin estate's guards had no obligation to protect everyone's safety for free. Regardless of whether it was in the past or now, you can only rely on yourself." Arbor nodded apathetically and didn't say anything before turning around and walking back to his tent. "Jojo." Eldest young Master Qin hastily called out and turned around to harshly reprimand Old Steward Luo. "How can you speak like that? Shut up if you don't know how to speak." Old Steward Luo was a very senior manager in the Qin estate, and the Qin estate's young masters had always held due respect for him. Chapter 4862. Eldest Qin reprimanded him in front of so many people today, which could be considered extremely severe. Old Steward Luo hurriedly cupped his hands in apology. "Yes, this old servant has overstepped his boundaries. This old servant will go and apologize to Miss Chow right now." Eldest young Sir Qin coldly glared at him. "No need." Murong Fei quickly followed Arbor into the tent and flicked her sleeve to create a soundproof barrier. "Little junior sister, are you suspecting something? Someone in the troop is experimenting on living people." Arbor resolutely said, "The Fong siblings are the first victims. That Miss Fong should be mutating soon." "What?" Murong Fei's eyes widened in astonishment. "Little junior sister, could it be that Miss Fong, she also drank the mutated medicinal liquid?" Arbor nodded and turned to look at her. "Did you tell your elder brother to pay more attention to his diet recently?" Murong Fei nodded. "I did." Arbor expressionlessly sat down in front of the short table. Holding a white porcelain teacup in one hand, he coldly said, "I can roughly guess." Early the next morning, everyone got out of bed and gathered with panda eyes. The breakfast distributed by the Qin estate was half a steamed bun with some salted vegetables for each person 2 days ago. Today's portion was even less than 2 days ago. They only received about 1/3 of the steamed bun, and there wasn't even any salted vegetables. Everyone looked at each other and silently chewed on the dried steamed bun with plain water. Duo Shanmei and the rest silently put away the steamed bun without eating. In any case, with their cultivation, it wouldn't matter if they didn't eat for a few days. That white steamed bun really didn't look appetizing. Yun Yunji yawned and jogged to Arbor's side. Ignoring Murong Fei's disdainful gaze, he hurriedly whispered, little junior sister, I have some apple soup that I made myself. Do you want a bowl? Arbor glanced at him and reluctantly nodded. Yun Yunji was overjoyed and hurriedly took out an ear cup from his inner world. Taking out 2 small bowls, he very sensibly poured a bowl each for Arbor and Murong Fei. Murong Fei originally didn't want to drink it, but when she saw Arbor drinking it in small sips, she put on a cold face and drank a few mouthfuls. It was still warm, and it tasted sweet and sour. It tasted pretty good. Little junior sister, I have eggs and meat buns here. You should eat some too. Yun Yunji took out a small plate, a few freshly peeled boiled eggs, and 5 palm-sized meat buns. Eat well for breakfast. When the secret realm opens, you'll have the strength to compete with others for treasures, Yun Yunji said with a smile. Arbor thought it made sense. He took a meat bun and took 2 bites. Miss Murong, go ahead and eat. Yun Yunji was a very perceptive person. Seeing that his junior sister had a good relationship with this lady from the Murong family, he quickly wanted to build a good relationship with the other party. Shouldn't the trivial matter between the Murong family and the Yun family from 100 years ago have long faded away in their generation? It was so annoying to always remember those grudges and hatred. If there was a grudge, it should be between the ancestors of the Yun family and the Murong family. It really didn't have much to do with them, the younger generation. Humph. Murong Fei threw him a cold glance, and raised her hand to take out a boiled egg. The 3 of them sat in front of the tent and ate, attracting many gazes from time to time. A middle-aged woman nibbled on the steamed bun in her hand without tasting anything, but her eyes were fixed on the plate of eggs and meat buns, not moving away. Steward Gu is back. Chapter 4863. Are you all right, Manager Gu? Several fellow workers glanced behind him and inquired quietly, where's Miss? Did they really throw Miss into the sea? In their opinion, this was too cruel. Wasn't throwing a young lady without any cultivation directly into the sea the same as helplessly watching her die? They didn't expect this trip to be so dangerous. All 3 members of the Fong family sigh. What was the use of earning so much money when Master Fong previously opened such a large trading company? It couldn't buy back the lives of their family of 3. Manager Gu's eyes glistened with tears as he shook his head and said in a choked voice, Miss also fell ill. What? Miss almost pounced at me and bit me. If it weren't for the royal guards firmly holding me down, I probably would have been bitten. Eldest sister-in-law Yang and the others' expressions all changed. In the eyes of ordinary people, the greatest characteristic of a zombie mutation was that it would bite people indiscriminately while in a delirious state. As long as one was bitten by a zombie, the zombie poison would mix into another person's body, and that person would also be out of luck. Therefore, zombies weren't actually scary. The scariest thing was that they were contagious. Are you all right, Manager Gu? Several people inquired in whispers with terrified gazes. When 5th young Sir Qin came over with pastries, he saw these people gathered in 2s and 3s and whispering about something. He didn't pay much attention to them and walked to Arbor without consulting anyone. With a glance, he saw that the little lady had already eaten her breakfast. Xiao Qiao, why are you so early today? Didn't the little stoic habitually sleep until the end of the morning or 9 in the morning before waking up? I'm full, the little fellow said expressionlessly. Inexplicably, the zither cultivator read traces of distant alienation in the stoic's eyes. What was going on? She was still fine yesterday, but the little stoic didn't like him early this morning. Young sir, 3 or 4 large ships have arrived at the beach. Many people have disembarked. It seems the news of the opening of the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm has spread throughout the 3 provinces. Eldest young Sir Qin absent-mindedly set down the cup in his hand and stood up to walk outside. Did something special happen today? Yes. 5th young Sir delivered breakfast to Miss Chow today, but he was rejected. The royal guard followed behind the eldest young Sir and recounted the details. Eldest young Sir Qin paused in his steps and sighed with a heavy gaze. He reached out and lifted the curtain. The cold wind blew against his face, and his soft hair swayed slightly in the wind. Qin Xian covered his forehead with one hand and narrowed his eyes as he looked into the distance. The dust and sand were blown away by the wind and went straight into people's eyes. The wind seems to be blowing. The guard behind him muttered softly. Qin Xian nodded slowly. It's windy. Patriarch. Patriarch. Mu Lixiang and Mu Yuanyuan were following behind the Mu family's team. When they saw Arbor's figure from afar, they quickly ran toward the camp. When the other members of the Mu family saw this, they quickly followed and formed a circle. They stood beside Arbor and greeted them one by one. Arbor nodded at the crowd in response. Mu Wuzi, that brat, revealed a trace of arrogance on his small round face. He raised his head and shouted, although you have already taken over the position of our Mu family's patriarch. But if you want me to acknowledge you, humph, you still need to make some achievements. Mu Jiating said longingly, what achievements do we still need? Patriarch is someone who continuously charged to the highest floor of Morning Sun restaurant and can even draw a sacred-grade golden talisman in the air. Chapter 48-64. Mu Lixiang nodded with a smile. That's right. Young Master Wuzi, aren't your requirements a bit too high? Could it be that young Master Wutz has already forgotten the miserable training at home a few days ago? Don't you know who said it? It's this new patriarch. Mu Wuzi grimaced as he grumbled in his heart. Mu Yuanyuan laughed in spite of herself. Aren't you afraid that the patriarch will punish you by doubling your training program? Ah. Mu Wuzi's small round face instantly turned bitter. He hurriedly took 3 steps back and said, forget it, forget it. It's not like I can't admit you. Arbor glanced at them expressionlessly. Why are you all here? Mu Lixiang's ability to express herself was very strong. She explained the matter clearly in a few words. It turned out that the Divine Continent had received news that the Lotus Sage Realm in the Pool of Forgetfulness had opened. Many aristocratic families of various sizes had organized many people to come and investigate. Arbor's brows furrowed almost imperceptibly, as if he smelled a conspiracy. She inexplicably thought of the Phoenix Egg on Seekong Planet and the experience in the Phoenix Forest during the Heaven Rankings preliminary round. Tianyin's usual method was to gather the cultivators of various aristocratic families and sects and then make a move against them. Don't let your guard down. Be ready to fight at any time. Arbor said to them. He turned to see Duan Tianya of the Duan clan, Do Fengmian, Do Fengqi, and the others of the Do clan. He had met the elite disciples of the aristocratic families before, so he was more or less familiar with them. Arbor glanced at them and then looked away. He said to Mu Lixiang and the others, go set up camp first. Be careful at night. This camp isn't peaceful either. Mu Lixiang and the others nodded repeatedly. Arbor saw that they were about to turn and leave, but he still said, someone turned into a corpse in the camp yesterday. Everyone's expression changed slightly. Come to me after setting up camp. I estimate that the entrance to the Lotus Sage Realm will open in the next 2 days. There were soundproof barriers and defensive barriers set up outside. If someone tried to eavesdrop through the barriers, Arbor and the others would immediately notice. At this time, Sir Jojo's tent was filled with more than 20 disciples of the Mu family. Yun Yunji and the 3 Murong siblings were also gathered there. I wonder what kind of situation this Pond Lotus Sage realm is. Arbor said indifferently, his fingertips lightly touching the table. After we enter the secret realm, we will immediately separate from them. Arbor took out a set of teleportation array glyphs. However, I don't know how the teleportation in the secret realm will be like. When the time comes, you must follow me closely. I will activate the teleportation as soon as possible. Everyone, activate your defensive barriers and put on your spiritual or divine armors. You must be careful. Because he didn't know what was going on, he didn't know where he would be teleported to. If he ended up in the cave of some ferocious beast, it would be a bloody battle. Of course, based on her past experience, the little crown princess believed that she wouldn't be so unlucky. All right. Mu Lixiang and the others quickly nodded. They already knew what kind of person this young patriarch was from their previous series of contacts. He was a man of his word, but at least the young patriarch was absolutely reliable. Mu Rongfei's heart suddenly jumped. Jojo, what are you suspecting? Can you tell us? There is definitely something wrong with the Qin family. Arbor said coldly. Chapter 4865. Inside the Dou family tent. Younger sister, don't you feel that the atmosphere in this camp is a bit strange? It gives people the feeling that everyone is doing their own thing. The person who spoke had dark skin and a tall and sturdy body. Even though he lowered his voice to speak, his volume was still not soft. Sitting opposite him was a woman who looked to be about 25 or 26 years old. She had delicate features and a pair of fox-like eyes that shone with a shrewd light. Eldest brother, we weren't originally from the same team. We just happened to be on this island waiting for the mystic realm to open. Younger sister, you're right. Eldest brother, you have to work harder this time. Look at these days, the limelight of our main family disciples has all been snatched away by those branch family disciples. Dou Xinwu pursed her lips and said indignantly, this time, we must find this 9-colored sacred lotus when we enter the Pond Lotus sacred realm. After taking this sacred medicine, no matter how bad it is, it can still raise one's cultivation by a large realm. If it can achieve the expected effect of cultivating 100 times faster within a year, that would be even better. That's just a legend. Dou Tingqi said woodenly and couldn't help but raise his hand to scratch his head. He didn't have much luck in his life. If he really could find the 9-colored sacred lotus, he would have to worry if it was the final radiance of the setting sun, eldest brother. Dou Xinwu jumped up from the stool and patted her brother's shoulder. How can you be so unambitious? You have to have confidence in yourself. Could it be that we, brother and sister, can't compare to those minor branch family disciples who came up from Sikong planet? Dou Xinwu pursed her lips. Those disciples in the family are all snobs. Seeing Dou Fengmian and Dou Fenghua's medical skills, they all come up to look at them and call them second young master or eldest young master. I don't want to hear it. Dou Tingqi laughed foolishly. But father also said that their aptitudes are indeed the best in the family. So what if they are the best? Didn't they come from a small and shabby starfield like Sikong planet? If it wasn't for our Dou family's nurturing, would they be where they are today? They don't know how to be grateful at all and still want to fight with eldest brother for the family head position. Dou Tingqi hurriedly waved his hand. Little sister, father also said that I am not suitable to be the patriarch. Big brother, you're really useless. Dou Xianwu angrily slapped the table. If I say you can, then you can. In short, this time in the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm, us siblings will definitely make the entire clan look at us in a new light. Mother still has half a steamed bun here. Eat it first. Mother, isn't hungry. The little boy's eyes stared straight at the half-eaten steamed bun in his mother's hand. He swallowed his saliva, but still shook his head firmly. Silly child, you're still growing. Come, eat it. Eldest sister-in-law Yang used her sleeve to wipe the corners of her eyes when her son wasn't paying attention. Her child had followed him all the way to escape. She didn't know how much hardship he had suffered. Every time, he was starving and cold. As a mother, she was useless. Originally, she had heard from the people in the village that the Wangchuan Sea was much more peaceful than the land. There were not as many zombies roaming around. She had thought that once she had gathered enough money, she would take her son to the sea and find a peaceful place to settle down. Who knew man proposes, God disposes. Arbor sat in his own tent and used his demonic pupils to observe more than 10 tents in succession. He didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Chapter 48-66. She silently waved her hand to smooth out the halo from her demonic pupils and pondered silently for a long time. In the evening, it started drizzling on the island, and it continued to drizzle. The people who were preparing to start a fire outside to cook soup were also drenched by the rain and returned to their tents. The food that the Qin estate could distribute was dwindling. It was probably because their resources were limited, so they had to ensure that their own people were full first. After Arbor learned of this situation, he straightforwardly took out some rations from his storage talisman and had people distribute them to eldest sister-in-law Yang and her children, hoping that they wouldn't have to eat weeds. However, before long, the 2 Qin estate guards who delivered the rations came running back furiously with red palm prints on their faces. Arbor couldn't help but be taken aback. After interacting with them these past few days, he knew that eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other women were all gentle and tactful people. How could they possibly attack the Qin estate's guards? Miss, please go out and take a look. The people who are snatching the rations are red-eyed. The little stoic was just about to go out when she saw the door curtain lift, and eldest young Sir Qin strode inside. He couldn't resist sighing when he saw her. Jojo, did you give them the rations? Arbor nodded in confusion. What is it? You don't know. When the Dou clan, Duan clan, and several other patrician families passed by the seaside village, they saved several hundred fishermen. They brought them along with them. Due to the lack of resources, many fishermen have been hungry for a day or two. Eldest young Sir Qin said helplessly, you suddenly gave eldest sister-in-law Yang and the others so much rations, so of course they would be envious. There are people who dare to snatch the things I give. The little crown princess's tone was extremely icy. Since ancient times, no one has been able to snatch from me, Arbor. Eldest young Sir Qin was most aware of her protective nature. After interacting with them these past few days, the little stoic had clearly classified eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other women and children into her protective category. Moreover, with the little stoic's stubborn and soft-hearted personality, if she knew that so many refugees had come to the island, she would definitely generously donate without hesitation. But now, the bad thing was that this bunch of stupid fishermen actually tried to snatch the rations from eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other women. Not only did he beat up the guards, he also injured eldest sister-in-law Yang and the other commoners. Arbor held up an oil paper umbrella and walked out of the tent. He saw the messy group of people not far away. Her eyes were emotionless as she stared at him coldly for a long time. Others didn't know what she was thinking, but she was the only one who knew. Arbor seemed to have seen his past life. When she and Captain Gao's training team went out on missions, they not only had to be wary of the mutant creatures that appeared from time to time, but they also had to be wary of people, the unpredictable human heart. Jojo. Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't resist calling out to her softly when he saw her standing there in a daze for a long time. Arbor came back to his senses and said expressionlessly, "Separate these people." When the Chin Estates guards received the eldest young master's instructions, they stepped forward and rudely pulled away the fishermen who were rolling in the mud. Some of the more vicious ones threw a few punches at them and knocked them to the ground. It wasn't like they couldn't beat these aggressive fishermen. It was just that they couldn't make a move without the young master's orders. The Chin Estates guards brought the chaotic scene under control within a few minutes. They shoved the fishermen who were the most aggressive in snatching the rations forward and shouted, "Behave yourselves." One of the fishermen with an extremely sturdy body bellowed, "What are you doing?" Chapter 48-67. Bam, bam. The Chin Estates guards bluntly knocked that person to the ground with 2 punches. Ha, the Chin Estates guards are so impressive. Do Xinwu couldn't resist mocking them when she heard the commotion and just happened to see this scene. What kind of ability was beating up a few fishermen without any cultivation? Eldest young Sir Chin indifferently swept this Miss Do a glance. "Miss Do, saving people is indeed a meritorious deed, but since you saved them, it's best to manage them well. Don't let them casually come out and bite people like rabid dogs." "Who are you calling rabid dogs?" Do Xinwu couldn't help but glare angrily at the eldest young sir when she heard the contempt and mockery in his words. "Whoever steals the grain is a rabid dog." Ling Gu harumphed and flung her torn sleeve to the ground. When the group of people surged over just now, it gave him a fright. Ling Gu did her best to protect the 5 young masters as they retreated, but who knew that the crowd would surge over and squeeze them in the center, making it impossible for them to leave. Do Xinwu gritted her teeth and glared at Ling Gu before turning to look at the leading fisherman. "You stole the grain." The fishermen pursed their lips, and one of them braced himself to quibble, "Eldest, we're all from the same camp. Do those women need so much grain? It's human nature to share some with us, right?" "Bah!" A shrewish woman scuttled out from eldest sister-in-law Yang's side and scolded with reddened eyes, "You only want a little. You've taken all the food away." Even when eldest sister-in-law Yang said to leave some for this child, you weren't willing. A bunch of immoral bandits still have the face to quibble here. Arbor glanced coldly at Do Xinwu and company. "After you're done being the Virgin Mary and erecting a memorial arch, you leave people there without a care. These people are now coming out to steal the grain like rabid dogs, but you actually turn a blind eye to it. Don't wear such a big hat if you don't have such a big head. Holy light isn't so easy to illuminate." The little stoic's rebuke made Do Xinwu and company flush red in the face. Without enough wealth, power, how could you illuminate the world with bullshit? How can you speak like that, miss? Do Wu couldn't help but be anxious. "What you mean is that we should just leave those fishermen in distress on the beach alone? Did he not care about their lives? You're too cruel." The fishermen immediately looked at Arbor with condemning gazes, as if the little stoic had done something heinous. Arbor looked at her expressionlessly, a hint of sarcasm in the corner of his mouth. "You overestimate yourself." Do Wu's eyes widened in anger. Just as she was about to refute, she suddenly heard a frightened cry from behind the crowd. Everyone retreated in all directions, leaving only the 2 siblings, Do Wu and Do Tingqi, who turned around in a daze and met a pair of dark eyes. That person was originally squatting on top of a person, biting that person's arm with all his might. At this moment, He looked towards them with a trace of dark red blood hanging from the corner of his mouth. Do Axayan Wu immediately let out an earth-shattering scream as she quickly hid behind her brother. That zombie's movements were extremely swift and ferocious, and it pounced in front of Do Tingqi. Do Tingqi almost collapsed on his butt. He was so frightened that he hastily kicked his legs and retreated several steps. That zombie's movements were extremely fast. With a strange wah, it suddenly jumped like a frog and opened its ghastly fangs to bite Do Tingqi's arm. Do Tingqi threw a punch in his panic. Chapter 48-68. The fist wind landed on the zombie's head with a bang, but it only caused the zombie to slowly shake its head. There was nothing unusual about it. At this moment, someone in the crowd cried out involuntarily. "Isn't this Manager Gu? Manager Gu has also mutated." Gu Dazhong was squatting on the ground, his eyes bloodshot as he stared coldly at Do Tingqi. Do Tingqi was about to pee his pants from his stare. He cursed in his heart, "You old fart, can't you find someone else to stare at?" Gu Dazhong roared and abruptly jumped up. Everyone instantly discovered that Manager Gu's jumping ability was too good. With just a light jump, he was already more than a dozen meters in the air. When he swooped down to pounce on Do Tingqi, his head was suddenly pierced by a black gold arrow, and he fell heavily to the ground. This Manager Gu's head was pierced by a jet-black arrowhead, and his limbs were still swinging non-stop on the ground. However, his entire body was like a frog that had lost its balance, unable to turn over even when facing the sky. Why can this zombie still move its limbs after being shot in the head? An aristocratic family disciple couldn't help but ask in shock. That was because a crystal core was forming in this zombie's head. If it wasn't destroyed, it would never stop moving. As he spoke, Arbor released a blue spiritual fire from his fingertip, which landed on Manager Gu's head. The fire quickly spread to Steward Gu's body, completely burning him into ashes. "Look, why is there a strong beam of light shining over there?" Just as one person finished speaking, another aristocratic family disciple couldn't help but exclaim, "It's the mystic realm. The mystic realm is open." "What? The Lotus Pond sacred realm is open?" That beam of light, Arbor's expression changed, and he turned to eldest young Master Qin and said, "Quickly send these ordinary people out." Eldest young Master Qin nodded hastily, but it was already too late when the light of transportation appeared. When the entire Lotus Pond Island was enveloped by this beam of light, everyone felt a burst of comfort throughout their bodies. It was as if they were floating in the air. In a flash, everyone in the campsite ran out of their tents and was instantly transported out after being enveloped by the light of transportation. The cultivators were thinking, "Oh no, so many people are going to the secret realm this time. I don't know if I can successfully get the treasure I want." Sister-in-law Yang and the fishermen were praying in the depths of their hearts, praying that the heavens would hear their voices and send them out of this place. As the light and shadow flickered, Arbor's vision was suddenly replaced by a scene of fragrant grass and butterflies filling the sky. There was no more sand in front of him. Instead, it was replaced by a small and quiet bamboo forest. The three siblings, Murong Fei and Murong Yen, as well as more than 20 people from the Mu family, were all teleported here. Soon after, the young masters of the Qin estate, the Duan clan, the Dou clan, and the other aristocratic clans were also teleported to this bamboo forest. Everyone looked at each other. Arbor's reaction speed was absolutely swift as he directly took out a set of teleportation talismans. As eldest young Master Qin called out "Jojo" in astonishment, bringing Murong Yenyun, Yun Yunji, and the group of people from the Mu family, they teleported away with a "so" sound. The 5 young masters widened their eyes in sadness. "Is Jojo looking down on us?" South light flashed, and Sir Jojo appeared beside them again with a group of people. Everyone, without another word, Arbor activated the teleportation talisman formation again. Chapter 4869. Whoosh! The group was instantly teleported away, and they teleported away again without hesitation. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. At the beginning, they might have thought that the little stoic's hand shook and opened the wrong teleportation talisman, but now, they were completely certain that this little fellow did it on purpose. She purposely teleported away to get away from them. Eldest young Sir Chen's eyes flickered, and his lips curled into a faintly discernible smile. He couldn't help but sigh softly in his mind, this imp was always so sharp. He really didn't know what to say. Or perhaps, from the very beginning, the little girl had always been wary of them. Swish! The little stoic and her group appeared expressionlessly beside the Chen estate's young masters again. Second Chen's eyes were sharp and his hands deft, and he was just about to grab this stoic face. However, this imp teleported away again with the group after 7 or 8 times in a row. Although the little stoic's expression didn't change, she was evidently having a mental breakdown on the inside. Moreover, Yunji and the others behind her had strange expressions. If they didn't want to leave this place as if they were fleeing for their lives, Yunji and the others really couldn't resist bursting into laughter because they teleported several times in a row. Arbor and his group had messy hairstyles that couldn't be blown away by the wind. It was a bit indescribable. Everyone, cough, Jojo. Swish. Swish swish swish, swish. After 18 teleportations, Arbor brought everyone back to their original location and said expressionlessly, "This place is surrounded by a bamboo forest. There's a lake ahead. Apart from this, the terrain is more or less the same as here. It's easy to get lost, so we have to be careful when we walk. Everyone, don't think that we won't know that you wanted to sneak away back then just because you kept a straight face and explained the situation here. Look at the hairstyles of those people behind you, each and every one of them had that crooked expression. Don't you think you're hilarious?" Eldest young Sir Chen restrained himself and pursed his lips into a smile. "Alright, then let's set off. Pay attention to the surroundings and don't get lost." Emichim, Arbor nodded solemnly. He couldn't help but grumble inwardly. They couldn't teleport in this godforsaken mystic realm. This mystic realm probably had a fixed teleportation entrance. No matter how many times he was teleported within the Pool Lotus sacred realm, he would always be teleported back to the entrance. How could there be such a ridiculous mystic realm in this world? Ha! This is simply infuriating. The little stoic's face was taut as she strode forward. Didn't the 5 great clans send people to guard this place? Where are they? Gathering all 5 keys didn't seem to be of any use. If this wasn't cheating, then what was? Who knew how many people had been cheated by this mystic realm since ancient times? Everyone knew that this little girl was very depressed, so they didn't say anything and hurriedly followed her footsteps. Yunji and the others inexplicably had an intense desire to survive. If they dared to laugh out loud at this time, the little stoic would definitely kick them out of the team in a fit of anger, absolutely not showing any mercy. Murong Fei said weakly, "This place is still the outer area of the mystic realm. Logically speaking, we have to walk further in before we can see them." Xiao Mu was involuntarily taken aback when she heard this. From Murong Fei's words, the guards of the 5 great clans were stationed at the outer area of the secret territory all year round. Wouldn't that be equivalent to being sealed in this secret realm for who knows how many years? Wasn't life simply too boring? What fun could there be in guarding the mystic realm all day long? Chapter 4870. Murong Fei saw her strange expression and knew that she had misunderstood. She hurriedly said, "Little junior sister, this mystic realm opens about once every 3 years. Every time it opens, the passageway will open. We basically rotate the guardians every 2 years. That was about 5 to 6 years. At that time, the guardians would change. Arbor made an "oh" sound, showing I'm not interested in the arrangements of the 5 great aristocratic families, look. Murong Fei coughed lightly and said, there won't be any problems in the outer area. Speaking of which, only by entering the sacred door opened by the gilded copper key can we be considered to have truly entered the interior of the mystic realm. Arbor! Exclamation point. Then why didn't you say so earlier, causing her to anxiously reveal her plan and let eldest Qin and the rest know that she wanted to escape? Damn! Eldest young master said with a smile, usually, in those ancient natural mystic realms, there are transportation restrictions and many other restrictions as well. It's not as loose as in Senior's inheritance mystic realm. Arbor's little face was cold as he glanced sideways at eldest young master. Without a word, he turned and left. Humph. Didn't he mean that even if everyone entered the sacred door opened by the gilded copper key, he might not be able to escape? Who would believe that? When they reached the inside, Sir Jojo would still escape. Everyone walked around this bamboo forest for an unknown period of time. A disciple from a small aristocratic family couldn't help but ask softly, where will the rest of the people go? When they were at the campsite, the pond lotus sacred realm suddenly opened and the light of transportation enveloped everyone. In theory, including the old, weak, women and children, there were about 1,000 people in their group who were transported into the mystic realm. However, the strange thing was that after walking around in this bamboo forest for about an hour, they still didn't see anyone else. Arbor muttered in his heart. Most of the people were ordinary commoners without cultivation. If possible, it was best to be transported out as soon as possible. I know this place. It's not far ahead. Murong Zhao hurriedly quickened his steps, turning back from time to time to urge his brother and sister. If we continue forward, we will see the guards of the 5 great aristocratic families. Murong Zhao suddenly stopped. He was walking at the very front, so when he stopped, everyone else naturally stopped as well. Everyone glanced over and couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. Dozens of corpses were strewn all over the ground, covering the path leading to the Saint Gate. The faces of these corpses had long been blurred, and their bodies had been dried by the wind. They looked like they had been dead for many years. What's going on? Murong Fei's heart tightened as she quickly followed her 2 brothers to check on the disciples of the Murong family. However, there was no way to find out anything. These corpses were basically skeletons, and the clothes on their bodies were tattered beyond recognition. Murong Fei and the others were barely able to recognize the 10 or so disciples from the badges on their waists. The 3 siblings' faces turned grave for a moment. All the disciples sent to guard the pond lotus sacred grounds had mysteriously died at the Holy Gate's entrance. What did this mean? A long time ago, someone had injured the guards and opened the door without permission. What's going on? Murong Yen frowned and muttered to himself, could it be that another elder of the Wangchuan Duo clan has barged into this holy gate? Duo Shanmei had been hiding at the back like a quiet little quail. Now that they heard Murong Shi slandering their family, they were unable to hold themselves back. Chapter 48-71. Duo Shanmei jumped up and shouted, Young Master Murong, don't accuse people unjustly, okay? Seeing Murong Yen looking over, Duo Shanmei couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. Yes. A year ago, there was an elder of my clan who was hot-headed and foolish enough to barge into the depths of the pond lotus sacred land. But didn't he already realize his mistake? Moreover, he was punished by the sacred realm and never came out again, right? Ha! Murong Fei couldn't resist snickering. You think he didn't want to come out? He just didn't have the ability to continue coming out to cause trouble. Murong Yen also nodded and said, it was precisely because of him that the path behind the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm's sacred gate was sealed at that time. Even at this time, it might not have been unsealed. It was unsealed. Young Master Omega Kotoku coldly interjected and lightly pushed out his left palm. As the energy ripples soundlessly spread out in the air, two thick scarlet gilded copper doors opened in response. Endless white fog emerged from inside and swept towards everyone outside the door. Jojo, it looks like the 5 gilded copper keys I gave you before are useless now, eldest young Master Qin whispered with a chuckle. This sacred gate could be opened with a push, so what kind of keys were needed? It was a waste of all the effort he put in earlier. Arbor took out 5 gilded copper keys from his pocket and looked at them pensively before suddenly throwing them out. The 5 gold-plated copper keys formed a circle before abruptly coming together to form a copper key in midair, which then landed in Xiao Mu's hand. The little stoic put the copper key into her pocket with a cold expression and didn't say anything. When everyone saw that she didn't say anything, they felt like their hearts were scratching their lungs and wanted to ask. Arbor led the group of Mu family members through the pile of corpses first, revealing a grave expression. After getting closer and observing, Arbor discovered that the bones and tendons of these people on the ground had been broken inch by an unknown person, and they died very cleanly. In other words, when they fought back then, it was practically a single exchange, and these people on the ground were killed by that opponent with a single strike. Everyone followed the flowing fog and stepped into the holy gate. In an instant, their eyes were immersed in a vast expanse of fog, and they couldn't see the people and objects around them clearly. Several screams came from beside him. The disciples of the aristocratic families immediately held their swords in front of their chests in panic and cried out in fear, "There's an ambush here." Something dragged them away, huala, after several sounds of water. Murong Fei hurriedly opened her spiritual consciousness and looked around. It would have been better if he didn't take a look, but when he did, he was shocked. It turned out that they were walking on a path paved with stones, which was only about a meter wide. On both sides of the path, there were dark and bottomless pools. From time to time, a giant tail would emerge from the deep pool and sweep up a man, dragging him into the depths of the pool. This giant tail appeared in the left side of the pool for a while, and then came out from the right side of the pool in the next. Everyone hastily ran forward together. Unexpectedly, the running crowd seemed to have angered this ferocious beast, and icy cold pool water splashed down on everyone's heads. A head the size of a millstone emerged from the pool, and its small eyes stared eerily at everyone. A long, giant tail with countless barbs rolled out and swatted at the people on the shore. Someone screamed, "Sacred beast ichthyosaur!" Chapter 4872. Someone immediately cried out in alarm, "The sacred beast dragonfish! It's the sacred beast, the sacred beast!" As if responding to everyone's panic, the giant long tail that rose from the deep pool smashed towards the stone path in the middle with a series of splashes. Boom! The huge tremors seemed to have smashed into everyone's hearts, causing them to jump heavily. Most of the cultivators looked back and forth in panic, and a trace of fear surfaced in their eyes. Not good. The sacred beast wants to smash this path. If everyone fell into the deep pool, then they would absolutely become a delicious meal for the sacred beast. While everyone was shouting like headless flies, the little stoic had already dashed forward, leading Yunji, Murong Yen, and the Mu family members in a mad dash forward. Shout, shout, shout! If shouting blindly was useful, then the sacred beast wouldn't chase after them. The stone path they were on now was the only path that led forward. What the hell were they shouting for instead of running there? When the others saw the little stoics group dashing forward quickly, they immediately understood. If they didn't run now, when would they? If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see that between the two dark pools, there was a narrow stone path that led straight to the front. Over 100 cultivators hurriedly dashed forward as if they were running for their lives. Someone ran in a hurry, and his figure flitted across the sky. However, in less than a second, his feet were pulled down to the ground, and he still stepped heavily onto the stone path. Flight was prohibited. This thought flashed through everyone's minds, and their hearts abruptly sank. One person tried again with a fluke mentality, but when his feet were only half a foot off the ground, he was slapped to the ground by a heavy force. He abruptly fell forward and rolled several times before crashing into a female cultivator. The two of them screamed and rolled into a ball. Just as they were about to fall into the deep pool together, a leg suddenly stretched out from the side and kicked them hard. This helped them stabilize their bodies. This dear friend broke out in a cold sweat. When he looked up, he saw Duo Shanmei looking at him with her arms crossed. Don't be so reckless. Not only did this dear friend almost kill her just now, he also dragged down the female cultivator next to her in passing. Sorry. That person repeatedly apologized, and hurriedly helped up the female cultivator who was rolling on the ground. As he spoke, a muffled sound came from the cobblestone road under their feet. It was unknown when the dragonfish's tail had curled up on the road. A small shoujo running at the very back was blocked by the ichthyosaur's enormous tail. He immediately found it difficult to move forward, and his face instantly turned pale. Save me. That guy's face was pale, his legs were trembling, and he couldn't help but tremble. The clansmen of the Duo clan looked back with sympathy in their eyes. Life is so fragile. In the blink of an eye, the ichthyosaur's tail, which was hundreds of feet long, suddenly swept towards the cultivator. Everyone hurriedly looked back and saw the barbs on the dragonfish's tail had pierced into the shoujo's body. In merely a few seconds, the cultivator was shredded into pieces. Not even a scrap of bone was left. All of them took a deep breath, and they didn't dare turn around and get distracted as they dashed forward madly along with the crowd. Then, he heard a series of cracking sounds coming from behind him. A wave of panic spread through everyone's hearts, and they hurriedly increased their speed. In a race of speed like this, no one would joke around with their own life. Chapter 4873. That was definitely a speed talisman. Using the speed talisman and acceleration medicinal liquid. Taking the acceleration medicinal liquid would allow him to run as fast as he could. He would run as straight as the wind, hating his parents for not giving him 2 more legs. Just as their hearts were about to jump out of their chests, the little stoic suddenly turned around and leaped up. Everyone, where were they? What was happening now? Why did they see the little stoic fly up and even run back? Illusion, this must be an illusion. Little stoic, come back. Jojo, what are you doing? Before Murong Fei could finish muttering, she saw the little stoic swiftly fling out a storage talisman and pulling out an oversized gold club from it. Her small face was stern as she glared angrily at the pursuing sacred ichthyosaur's huge tail. Without a second word, she smashed it down with a boom. After a deafening crash, everyone's pupils contracted. They clearly saw several barbs on the ichthyosaur's tail break from the little stoic's smash. However, it only broke a few barbs and didn't cause any substantial damage to its tail. Even so, the little stoic's provocative action still infuriated the ichthyosaur. After a furious roar, this ichthyosaur bore out from the depths of the pond with its catfish head. It spat out a string of bubbles from its wide mouth, and its 2 long whiskers flew up, looking like it was blowing its whiskers and glaring. Arrogant human. Mommy, It spoke. A cultivator's mind went blank, and she suddenly screamed. Everyone turned to look at her, and they all looked like they had been struck by lightning. Please. It was a sacred beast, okay? Let alone speaking, it wasn't impossible for it to even transform into a human form. This was probably the first time this female cultivator saw a sacred beast, so she blurted out this sentence in a moment of nervousness. She blushed a bit when she thought about it and hastily smiled sheepishly. Cough, I forgot. Being able to remain calm with such a large fish-head sacred beast looming in front of everyone was enough to prove that she was used to grand spectacles. After Arbor smashed down several times with his club, he looked back at the stupefied crowd and couldn't resist roaring, "Are you stupid? Why didn't you continue running? You all want to keep them as desserts." That female cultivator was an extremely emotional person, and her eyes turned red on the spot. Miss Chiao is really a good person. We must not let her sacrifice down, let's go. Jojo Sama, who had somehow been given the good guy card, looked back with a puzzled expression. A group of people who are in the way, hurry up and go away. If he stayed behind her, she wouldn't be able to fight freely. The little stoic rubbed her stomach and muttered in her heart, "Child, watch mother take care of this big-headed catfish that scared you. I'll pluck out its whiskers and have your father make the god-binding silk." The god-binding silk made from the sacred beast's beard was definitely better than the spirit-binding rope. It shouldn't be bad to use it as a toy for a doll. A ruthless glint flashed across Chiao Mu's eyes. Consider yourself unlucky to have met this Lord Chiao. You've been lurking in this place for who knows how many people you've eaten. Now that you've been killed by me, it's an eye for an eye. Humans kill beasts, and beasts eat humans. The law of the jungle has never changed since time immemorial. Arbor waved his hand, and over 100 blue talismans flew out, forming a binding talisman matrix that trapped the fish dragon inside. The second young master and the others flew forward, their expressions a bit dazed. Jojo, what are you doing? Shouldn't he stay away from this sacred beast under normal circumstances? Chapter 48-74. Arbor glanced at them. Of course, we're going to beat it to death and then divide its flesh and crystal core. All these years, it has eaten many cultivators and replenished a lot of spiritual energy. It's time to pay the price. Arbor said aloofly, also, we can't pass if we don't beat it to death. Everyone from the Qin estate looked at her in bewilderment. You said you're going to beat this intelligent sacred beast to death on the spot. Did you consider the sacred beast's psychological trauma before saying that? Arbor clearly did not consider that. Right now, there was only one thought throbbing in her mind. Kill this sacred beast and extract its crystal core to nourish the cute little puppy. Whether the cute little puppy could recover and Murong Sun's hope of waking up all depended on it. So, how could she let this sacred beast go? Why did we come to the Pond Lotus sacred realm? Arbor asked coldly, his expression still unchanging. Didn't we come for the treasures here? The supreme treasure is right in front of you. Why aren't you going to take it? This sacred beast is good stuff from head to toe. I only want the crystal core. I can give you the rest. The Omega Kotoku young sir only felt that the little hoodwinker in front of him was a bit dazzling. When she expressionlessly tricked people, it really felt like she was hitting their hearts. Some people from the Qin estate were already convinced by Arbor and frequently looked at the second young sir. The second young sir smiled faintly. Jojo, if you want the crystal core, then I'll give it to you. You're smart. Arbor snorted and moved his fingers, swiftly activating a binding talisman matrix. Reckless humans. The big-headed catfish snorted coldly. Do you think you weak and puny humans with low cultivation can do anything to me? Today, I'll let you experience us sacred beasts of Clang. Arbor leaped up while it was spouting nonsense and swooped down, smashing his club on its head. Although the big-headed catfish didn't feel any pain, it was still on fire. He opened his wide mouth and sprayed out a stream of water in the shape of an arrow, shooting straight at the little stoic's face, bludgeoning the fish head. The little stoic shouted angrily and flew down, smashing the fish's head several times in a row with bind, 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 thud, thud, thud. The corners of eldest young Sir Chin's eyes couldn't help twitching. He had just led a group of people to evacuate, and when he turned back, he happened to see such a strange scene. The little stoic covered herself in an eggshell and raised the club in her hand high up, fiercely knocking on the catfish's head. Her speed was so fast that it dazzled the eyes. Hit the fish head with a stick, 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 chop the fish head with hot peppers. After a round of smashing, Arbor retracted his chi and returned to his fist. He placed his small hands beside his body and let out a long sigh. Ha! What did he say just now? Looking at the giant catfish head in front of him, the originally flat fish head had become even flatter after being beaten up by Sir Jojo. Most importantly, the two long whiskers on his lower jaw were actually pulled out by this little bastard. Fuck! Everyone silently ridiculed in their hearts. The little stoic's ruthlessness and viciousness were simply unparalleled. Weren't you hitting the fish head with a stick the whole time? Why did you end up plucking its whiskers? Aren't you leaving a bit of face for the sacred beast? Let alone a sacred beast, even a tiny spiritual beast absolutely couldn't take it lying down after being crushed and humiliated like this. Chapter 48-75. If they wanted to fight, they had to fight. How could a holy beast's dignity tolerate such provocation? The dizzy and disoriented holy beast, the ichthyosaur, huffed and puffed, and its small eyes emitted a harsh light of fury. This damn little human actually dared to humiliate this holy beast like this. Now, I'll let you have a taste of a holy beast's true might. This big-headed catfish lifted its gigantic tail out of the deep pool, and the barbs on its tail suddenly flew out one by one. Each barb was like a sharp arrow, carrying an unparalleled holy power pressure as it uniformly shot toward the little stoic's body. This attack was too powerful, and the little stoic knew she couldn't withstand it at all. No matter how sturdy her eggshell defensive barrier was, it could only block this holy beast's attacks at most 3 times. Moreover, every time she blocked to the limit, it would wear down this eggshell on her body. She quite liked this eggshell now and didn't want it to be scrapped at this critical juncture. Young Master Omega Kotoku coldly shouted, "Purple firmament," and an intense aura immediately descended from the sky. The gigantic dragon smashed into the cobblestone road with a bang, smashing open another huge hole in the road that was already torn apart by the ichthyosaur. Stone powder rustled and rolled down, sprinkling into the deep pool below. Arbor instantly flew into the air and expressionlessly looked down at everyone below. Everyone. It wasn't a misconception, it really wasn't a misconception. Just now, they were still wondering how the little stoic could fly around in the air for so long. She had paused in midair more than once when the club struck the fish head. As it turned out, this fellow really could fly in a domain that forbade flying. What was going on? Why could this oddball the little stoic fly? Even holy beasts were restricted in this place. Didn't the second young master summon purple firmament and smash it to the ground? What did this mean? Even holy beasts were restricted by the spatial laws here, okay? The little lady actually flew around without any restrictions. Everyone was silently gloomy. If it weren't for the fact that the current situation didn't permit it, they really wanted to go up and ask her how she did it. Arbor used a triple binding talisman matrix to trap that big-headed catfish and abruptly shot Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon a look. There was only one word in his mind: hurry. The Purple Firmament Thunder Dragon was speechless. What was the meaning of the facial paralysis winking at her? Did she think that with just a glance, others would immediately understand what she meant? Would it kill him to say something? Zi Xiao, Prince Omega Kotoku whispered. Get rid of it. Old Steward Luo smiled like a Mithraea. Young master, be careful. This is a sacred beast, the ichthyosaur. If we infuriate it and make it go berserk, all of us here will have to bear the consequences. No matter how much you look like a dragon, you're still just a fish, Prince Omega Kotoku said lightly. But this ichthyosaur has a powerful aura. Young master shouldn't have asked Zixao to help at such a time, he didn't know what would happen after that. With the young master's cautious personality, he wouldn't have been so impulsive if it weren't for the facial paralysis. The second young master glanced at him coldly and said in a cold voice, "Are you teaching me how to do things?" "I wouldn't dare." Elder Luo hurriedly bowed and retreated silently. At the same time, Zixao and that ichthyosaur had already started fighting. There were binding talisman matrices around the big-headed catfish, so the one facing Zixao would be the one being brutally abused. Before Zixao appeared, its tail full of barbs still appeared very large and had extremely strong attack power. Chapter 48-76. But now, compared to a true dragon sacred beast like Zixao, the ichthyosaur seemed a bit lacking. The two sacred beasts fought above the deep pool. The ichthyosaur spat out a mist of water and was struck by Zixao's lightning, creating a streak of lightning in the air. Everyone only saw a streak of lightning flash before their eyes, and they abruptly fell into the deep pool, unable to create a splash. Everyone subconsciously took a step back. The ichthyosaur crashed heavily onto the stone path, its tail leaving a bloody mark. This sacred beast that suddenly appeared in front of it was actually stronger than it. This made it angry, but at the same time, it also felt a little scared. It had occupied this mountain as its king for who knew how many years. The cultivators it had eaten were almost innumerable. When had it ever suffered such a loss at the hands of others? Besides, the ichthyosaur's wide mouth opened and closed as it said angrily, "You and I are of the same kind, so why are you helping a mere human deal with me?" "If you and I joined hands, don't listen to it," Arbor coldly interrupted the ichthyosaur. "This cowardly coward can't beat you. It only wants to stabilize you first and then attack you ruthlessly when the opportunity arises. If you don't have a brain, you'll fall for its trick." Zixao. These words sounded like a reminder, but why did it sound so unpleasant? What did he mean by he would fall for its trick if he didn't have a brain? The implication was that if he continued to listen to the ichthyosaur, he would be a brainless guy. Zixao, young master Omega Kotoku said coldly. The purple firmament lightning dragon instantly flew into the air. In the next second, it crashed onto the ground with a boom, completely collapsing the stone path on one side. "Idiot!" Arbor cursed inwardly and threw a flight talisman at it. The purple firmament lightning dragon instantly felt its body lighten, and it abruptly soared into the air. Everyone from the Qin estate finally understood. It turned out that the little lady used a flight talisman. No wonder she could ignore the restrictions here. The Stoic's flight talisman could actually ignore restrictions. Everyone couldn't help but be taken aback. It probably wasn't an exaggeration to say that this little Stoic was the #1 talisman practitioner in the 3 provinces. Zixao rose into the air and rapidly pulled away from the dragonfish. Long Ting leaped and spat out several palm-sized lightning bolts. Following a series of rumbling sounds, the ichthyosaur suddenly scuttled down the cobblestone road. Just as he was about to dive into the deep pool to hide, he bumped into a wall. Arbor had already used a defensive talisman to set up a barrier on the surface of the water. How could they allow the ichthyosaur to hide in the water? Thus, the pitiful ichthyosaur met with a tragedy. The moment it turned around and retreated, it was hit in the head by a fist-sized thunderbolt. It immediately fell down and smashed into the wall, making a dull sound. The little stoic seized the opportunity to dash forward and hit the ichthyosaur's abdomen with the club in her hand. The fish immediately flipped its belly to the sky and rolled on the water barrier with a thud. Omega Kotoku leaped forward and slashed the ichthyosaur's abdomen with his sword. The ichthyosaur let out an anthropomorphic scream. It stared in horror. A round crystal abruptly leaped out from its slashed abdomen. Arbor reached out and sucked this sacred beast crystal into his storage talisman. Then, he turned around and fled while shouting, "Run!" Everyone was baffled at first. "Didn't you take the sacred beast crystal and we'll take the remaining sacred beast bones and blood? We're about to win the battle, why are we running yet?" When they turned around, the ichthyosaur's open abdomen started to swell. Fuck, it was going to self-detonate. Chapter 4877. Holy shit, this really was going to self-destruct. Everyone almost pissed their pants in fright. This self-destruction was no joke. Today, it was the self-destruction of a real saint beast. No one could estimate how powerful it would be and what the result would be. Elder Luo's smiling face instantly froze. "Young master, I'm afraid we can't withstand the self-destruction of this sacred beast." The Omega Kotoku young master spat out a word, "Go." The group, along with Elder Luo, sprinted forward. Elder Luo's fat body nimbly moved forward at an extremely fast speed. "Little girl, we've really been screwed by you this time." Dugu Ling floated behind the little girl like a spirit and said faintly. The fatty carried her large purple gold melon hammer and followed behind Dugu Ling with her short and chubby legs. She cursed the entire way. "I just knew that nothing good would come out of meeting this damned girl. Everyone, now you're giving advice after the fact. You didn't say it just now. If you had said it earlier, maybe we would have been as far away from this damned girl as possible." On the other side, Arbor used a flying glyph. Her speed was very fast as she rushed at the very front. Everyone looked at her back and felt their balls hurt. This damned girl didn't waste any energy. Other than using a flying glyph, she also used a speed glyph. In this way, her speed was even faster than the two young masters of the Qin estate. She really was damned. The few Shouja who were running at the very back looked back in terror. They only saw a ferocious wave of air surging over and chasing after them. Their hearts almost jumped out of their chests in fear. The self-destruction of a sacred beast was extremely powerful. That wave of air viciously chased after them from behind. It was like a ferocious beast that had taken human form and was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Arbor couldn't help but look back. She saw that under the amiable gray fog, the wave of air had devoured the cobblestone path behind them. Wherever the gray fog swept, the cobblestone path collapsed. Countless stone fragments rustled as they rolled into the deep pool. Several practitioners who were running and turning their heads back stumbled the moment they turned their heads, and stumbled forward a few steps. Seeing that the gray chi wave was about to catch up with them, their faces turned ashen. They all cried out in their hearts, "This is bad." In the blink of an eye, Arbor flicked his finger and a few streaks of light flashed into their bodies. As soon as the talisman power entered their bodies, the practitioners immediately felt their bodies become lighter. With a slight push, they flew a few meters away. At this time, the wave of air had already caught up to their original position and swallowed up a section of the cobblestone road below. Arbor turned around and continued forward. Not long after, he saw a group of people in front of him. They were like ants on a hot pan, gathered in twos and threes, arguing about something. Heavens, why are you guys still here? A Cheen Estates cultivator couldn't help but shout out. Quickly leave. The shock waves from the Saint Beast's self-destruction were about to reach them. Why were these people standing in the middle of the path? Did they want to die? These people were too funny and laughable. What the hell were they arguing about in this kind of place? When that emotional female cultivator saw Arbor flying over, her eyes couldn't help but brighten. She said with a face full of pleasant surprise, "Your Excellency, you've returned safely." Arbor glanced at her. He felt somewhat baffled. This female cultivator was suddenly so amiable and cordial to him. Why was that? Another male cultivator stepped aside, and Xiao Mu caught sight of a large, gilded copper door behind them. Chapter 48-78. Why is there a door here? Everyone looked up at the large bronze door in bewilderment. They saw that this large bronze door went straight up, connecting to the depths of the dome, as though it was one with the cave walls. Therefore, it was impossible to take a shortcut to cross it unless they opened this folding bronze door. Jojo. Murong Fei squeezed through the crowd to stand in front of her. We tried many methods, but we couldn't open this folding bronze door. Everyone, use Fire Spirit Burn and concentrate your divine power to blast it, but it's useless. Therefore, it was useless for them to squeeze here. They still couldn't pass through. Lady Jojo was expressionless. Then you, oh right, how are things on your side? That sacred beast didn't make things difficult for everyone. Murong Fei continued to speak, but she stopped abruptly in the middle of her sentence. Because she had already seen that the male cultivators flying at the back were being chased by a gray wave of air that stuck to them like a shadow. That wave of air transformed into all kinds of forms, including tigers, wolves, lions, leopards, and so on. When it reached here, the wave of air transformed into a huge bird with enormous wings. It flapped its 100-feet-long wings and roared as it surged toward them. Hurry up and think of a way to open this red bronze door. Eldest young Master Cheen roared at the people behind him. Then, he raised his hands and pushed out a surge of sacred power. At the same time, Dugaling, Fatty, Fei Zhuang, and the others hurriedly followed, helping eldest young Master Cheen set up a large-scale defense to block the huge gray bird that was charging toward them. Boom! Under the impact, the road outside the barrier shattered bit by bit. Now, they had no way out. After the destruction along the way, that stone path had long been destroyed. They had no other choice but to continue forward. Hurry up! Eldest young Master Cheen's handsome face darkened, revealing traces of anxiety on his face. Lady Jojo's pretty little face was tense. Actually, you guys, hurry, attack it together. Eldest young Master Omega Kotoku led a group of people forward and gathered their strength to blast at the red bronze door. Jojo looked at them speechlessly. I think that actually, everyone, put in more effort. Focus fire, focus fire. A bold middle-aged man raised his arm and roared. Once, twice, countless times. Everyone was so busy that their heads were drenched in cold sweat, and their hands were slightly trembling. Seeing that first young master and the others could not hold on for much longer, the situation was extremely dangerous. The bald uncle squatted on the ground, exhausted. He pounded the ground twice and covered his bald head with a sad face. He wailed, "Are we all going to die here this time?" Actually, Jojo couldn't help but roll his eyes. Heavens, I'm still young and beautiful. I really don't want to die in such a dark cellar. Arbor watched them cry out in sorrow for a long time. One by one, they rushed forward and bombarded the pitiful red bronze door with all their might. There were a few young cultivators whose eyes were red and bulging. It was obvious that they had used too much strength and their hands were trembling. The little stoic couldn't bear these people's idiocy any longer. The little girl roared angrily, "Are you all crazy? This group of people, they are all idiots. Can't they let Lady Chow Chow finish her words?" Everyone turned to look at her, stupefied. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.